5:30 business meeting of the Lawrence Douglas County Commission on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. Our agenda starts with our consent agenda. We have a total of 10 items on our consent agenda. We'll then do general public comment. We have a number of regular agenda items. I'm going to go over real quickly. I did before the meeting for the public, but I'm going to do it again here, how we're going to handle public comment and public comment around some of our agenda items. If you're here to comment on the Met Tower or the SODAR units, we'll take that during the agenda item. If you're here to make comments about wind turbines or wind turbine regulations, we ask that you do that during public comment. If you had a chance to sign up before the meeting, great. If not, and you still want to make some public comment, we'll save some time. We'll make sure that you have a chance to sign up for that. After our general business items, we'll have appointments, then Commissioner and Administrator miscellaneous. Got it. Thank you. Here's just some general comments about our public comment section. Each action item on the agenda will offer an opportunity for relevant public comment about that topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item you're here for comes up for discussion. Additionally, near the start of the meeting, we'll invite folks for general public comment to the commission, which is a time for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but related to general county business. Public comment will not be recorded and shared on our county's YouTube site to ensure compliance with YouTube's content policies. To hear public comment, individuals can join us live on Zoom or here in the courthouse. We'll first call on folks here in person, and then we'll turn to any online commenters who are here with us tonight. If you're on Zoom, please plan to use the raise your hand function when the time comes and listen for staff to call your name. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask everyone to give their full name, Douglas County residents, and Douglas County residents for our meeting minutes. All public comments should be directed to the County Commission. We also reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who is vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. The public should also know that comments received by the County Commission during our meetings do not represent the views of Douglas County government. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen. Please know that online participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet during tonight's meeting. Materials are published online for your reference as well. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube page and website. With that, we'll go to our consent agenda. Does any commissioner have an item they'd like to remove from our consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none, does any member of the public have an agenda item that they would like to have removed for discussion from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Sarah, anyone online? Okay. I'd take a motion for our consent agenda.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve consent agenda items 1.1 through 1.10. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we'll move to general public comment. The blue one, I'm told. Oh, there it is. Okay, I have 7 people on this list. This doesn't include those who are online, and we'll start with Jim Briggs. Jim, you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments right over here to the microphone. Regular business agenda. And our first item on our regular business agenda is 2022 year-end transfers.
Thank you, commissioners. We're moving Cami Owens, our budget manager, into the panel as well. This is a routine part of our year-end operations as we close out our fiscal year, which is to review our transfers that are planned as a part of the budget process, and that we can do here at year end and have this published as a part of our commission agenda and our process, and then used by our auditors and our financial system. Cami and I are here if you have any specific questions for us on any specific transfers. But with that, I'll just stand for commissioner questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, do you have any questions on this item? All right, there seems to be no questions. We'll open this up to see if any member of the public would like to provide public comment on this item. Okay, none here. Anyone online?
There appear to be no online public commenters.
Okay, so with that, commissioners, I'd entertain a motion for item 3.1.
Commissioner Reed, I move to approve the 2022 year-end transfers.
I'll go ahead and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes. All right, now we'll move on to a temporary business use permit for NextEra Energy for Tower Associates LLC to allow a 60.26 meter meteorological evaluation tower to be located on the property generally described as being southeast of the intersection of North 400 Road and East 550 Road. And Carl Bauer, I believe, is our planner who's going to talk about this item. Welcome, Carl.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Carl Bauer and I'm the county planner with the Zoning and Codes Department. This is the first of 5 applications that you'll be hearing tonight from Tower Associates LLC. I have a map on your screen showing the 6 recent applications that we received. Of course, back on November 30th, this board approved a similar Met Tower on property about 3.5 miles to the west. The Met Tower we're considering right now is this Met Tower right here on property owned by Jerry McElhaney, just north of Globe. The orange line on this map is the Santa Fe Trail. So a little bit of background. Tower Associates LLC is requesting a permit to allow a meteorological evaluation tower. These towers are 60.26 meters in height, which is 197 feet and 8 inches. They're a guy wired tower with meteorological equipment placed on them. Again, this is property owned by Jerry McElhaney. Met towers are used to collect data on the weather patterns and to gauge the viability of potential future wind energy projects. This application is not for a wind turbine or a wind farm. It is only for a specific Met tower on this specific property. The Met tower is erected in one day. It arrives in a package and is built up in that one-day period. It doesn't have any lighting on it, no blinking lights. The Federal Aviation Administration requires lights on towers that are over 200 feet. So this tower is just under that threshold. The structure is temporary and is in place for approximately 5 years. It has no foundation or no permanent structures attached. It's just anchored into the ground with wires. As far as location, this is about 1/2 mile northeast of Globe on property southeast of the intersection of North 400 Road and East 550 Road. The property is currently developed with an emergency communications tower with a water tower immediately adjacent to it. There is a Santa Fe Trail marker right about here on the map across the street. The surrounding and nearby land uses are primarily agricultural with single family residences scattered around. There are some churches and cemeteries nearby as well. And in the town of Globe, there is an art gallery and studio. This isn't within 3 miles of any incorporated city. Globe, about 1/2 mile to the south, is an unincorporated community. And again, this is about 3.5 miles, east of the Met Tower approved on November 30th of last year. The entire property is overlain with soils considered either prime farmland, that's the area in green, or soils of statewide importance, that's the area in tan. And there is a wetland on the property, a stream running through there. The proposed Met Tower is not anticipated to interfere with that stream. This is an image of what the tower will look like. Again, 60.26 meters in height, and it's secured to the ground with guy wires. And now looking at the review. As far as adverse impacts on the natural environment, with a temporary business use, there is no environmental review required. Staff received a comment on the last application from Dr. Roger Boyd that indicated that guy wired towers may cause bird kills and other adverse impacts to wildlife. We did ask the applicant with that last application what they do to prevent bird strikes and bird kills. So they submitted those comments right there that the site is monitored by local land agents and they have bird and bat diverters on each of their towers. Additionally, there's no foundation or permanent equipment installed with these towers, and that helps minimize the impacts to those prime soils present on the property. Additionally, the recommended conditions of approval further serve to mitigate any adverse impacts. As far as detrimental effects on neighboring properties, there are no blinking lights because this is under the FAA requirements. Staff is unaware of any nearby airport or airstrip that would be impacted by this request. As far as impact to heritage site, this does border the Santa Fe Trail. On a map of the Santa Fe Trail produced back in the 1980s by Gregory Francois, there don't appear to be any ruts preserved nearby, and any ruts that would be in the area would be difficult to discern because the area is almost entirely plowed fields. Also, we don't anticipate this to degrade the experience of any tourists traveling along the trail, as there's already a tower nearby. This tower would be further away than the existing tower from that monument. And there's also that water tower there as well. As far as public gain, we haven't identified a public gain, except this provides the applicant's organization with meteorological data to gauge the viability of a future wind energy project. For public services availability, again, construction is completed in one day. There's minimal impact to traffic. Not anticipating any increase in traffic beyond current levels. Compatibility with the surrounding land uses, again, is primarily agricultural in this area with some scattered residences. There is an emergency communications tower on this property, and we have a recommended condition of approval indicating that the proposed Met Tower cannot interfere with the day-to-day operations of that critical infrastructure, the emergency communications tower and the water tower. So that is included in your packet that we have that. We don't anticipate any impact on that critical infrastructure, but we do have that condition included. And as far as adequacy of continued maintenance, the applicant indicated that there will be local land agents monitoring the site. This application is being considered as a temporary business use application, similarly to the one that was approved back in November. This doesn't require planning commission consideration. It comes straight to you. The county zoning code requires notification to be sent to property owners within 1/2 mile. 12 letters were sent out back on January 11th. And the information for this meeting was also posted on the City of Lawrence's wind energy page. We haven't received much comment from outside agencies. We did send this to the townships and the fire districts and those types of groups, and we didn't receive any comments opposing this. We did reach out to Dr. Roger Boyd again, and he didn't provide anything in addition to what he provided back in November. I have that comment from November posted there for you. We have had several rural landowners call us asking for details about tonight's meeting, and we gave that to them. And any written communication we received has been included in your packet for your review. So now for some site photos. I visited there back on Monday. This is looking east-southeast from that Santa Fe Trail marker. The Santa Fe Trail marker is this green sign, and then there's a granite rock there. The water tower right here and the emergency communications tower right next to it. The Met Tower would be about between 1/4 and 1/2 of a mile down the road, right about here. This is looking closer at that Santa Fe Trail marker. This is looking north-northeast along East 550 Road. This is close to where the tower would be located, right about here. And then looking directly east at the property, the tower would be right in front of us at this point, somewhere in here. So with that, staff is recommending approval for a 1-year period with the following conditions. These are the same conditions as approved in November with 2 additions. One, that the meteorological evaluation tower shall not interfere with the critical infrastructure on and around that property. And the second additional condition is that they have to have a sign with emergency communication, or excuse me, emergency phone numbers posted nearby. That's a general requirement with towers, and the applicant indicated that they would be doing that on the tower approved in November. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Carl. Commissioners, any questions on this item?
But we do have legal counsel, John Bullock, on the Zoom call as well.
Thank you.
I will have once we've heard from applicant and the public.
So that was a question to you, Sarah. Do we hear from the applicant? We typically do that for planning commission items. This isn't a planning commission items. This is a temporary use request.
The applicant, John Felito, is available on Zoom, and he is raising his hand right now, so he will be available to speak.
I'm not, Tanya or Carl, help me. Do we traditionally allow the applicant okay.
Okay. We'll let the applicant go ahead and say a few words.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yes. we
Um,
can.
Good evening, Douglas County Commission and planning staff. My name is John Felito. I'm a project developer with NextEra Energy representing Tower Associates. We are applying for one additional Met Tower, meteorological tower, to be erected in Douglas County for the use of determining the future viability of a potential wind project in Douglas County. This structure is identical to the one that we permitted back in November. It has the same, the identical physical characteristics. The location is different, obviously. But looking through the staff report and thinking about the permit application that we provided in November, I don't have any additional comment other than to say we have no problem with complying with the conditions listed in this iteration of our application.
Thank you, John. Commissioner Willie.
Now I have a question. So John, you've had several, or maybe just through the staff have had several neighbors ask for a different location consideration on the tower within that property. Have you been contacted by those people or heard from staff on it, and how do you feel about those? One of those is in our packet.
I have not been contacted personally about the particular location of this Met Tower, other than the discussions with Douglas County regarding its proximity to the Santa Fe Trail. We absolutely considered that, and I defer to the staff report regarding the surrounding infrastructure, similar structures, water tower, emergency communications tower. But I've not been contacted personally regarding the particular siting and location of this tower.
How much leeway, this is Commissioner Willie again, how much leeway do you have to consider other locations for that tower tonight?
Tonight, I don't have any. These towers and the accompanying SODAR units that we're also applying for are sited in a particular way to best measure wind resource in the area that we're considering. So this tower is placed here specifically to most properly gauge potential future wind project viability in the area.
So when you write contracts for these, this is not in our, in what is before us tonight, but this is something you probably work with pretty regularly. What is the distance from that tower where a landowner or a neighboring landowner would have to change what they could do with their land? What's that radius?
I'm sorry, I don't fully understand the question.
So presumably when you write a contract, you're asking a landowner to give up rights to build right up next to the tower and within a certain distance of the tower. What is that distance?
Absolutely. Well, we site the tower in a particular area of the owner's property and only target certain property owners that have the necessary acreage to host this type of tower. The setbacks for this particular tower are a minimum of 300 feet, well above the actual height of the tower, from property lines and roads. As far as use on property, it would be greater than the height of the tower. So a certain distance greater than the height of the tower, presumably 300 feet as well.
So usually when we talk about a fall risk. It's not just the height of the object, it's that height plus a certain percentage in addition, either 10%, usually 50% in addition to the height of that.
Correct. In this case, the height of the tower is 197 feet. The particular provision here, I believe, is 300 feet.
So what's been proposed is 300 feet, not only from the nearest road, but also from the nearest non-participating landowner property line. Is that unusually small for to encroach upon possibly a neighboring property owner's rights?
300 feet, no, that's given that the tower height is below 200 feet, 300 feet would be slightly over 1.5 times the height of the tower. So in this instance, no, we did not see that as infringing on the rights of nearby landowners.
We had Mr. Alan Cheever, who also had submitted something in the packet suggesting a location closer to the other towers that are on that property. And I recognize we don't want to interfere with the water tower or the emergency communications tower. Was that a site that was considered to be close to the top of the hill and also kind of visually within the range of those other towers?
Not to my knowledge. Our team cites these towers in a particular area based on determination of wind resource data. I would have to guess that a reason it wasn't located closer to those other towers was to not get within range or interfere with the existing infrastructure that is nearby the property.
I'll ask one more question now, and I may have more later. How is the information gathered from this tower different from what is publicly available for wind data?
It's a higher level of detail in addition to just general wind speed data. Met towers gather atmospheric pressure data and other information, more complex than the SODAR units that we're also applying for. But the level of detail that the Met towers can gather is higher than that of what is publicly available in any governmental or private databases.
Thank you. That's all I have for the moment.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Reed. A follow-up question to kind of piggyback off of Commissioner Willie's last question there, and that's can you talk about what Tower Associates and or NextEra, how much time do you typically and with other Met towers and with this one intend to collect data in order to determine that viability? Whether or not there's viability based on that data, will it be 1 year, 2 years? How long are you looking at data before making a determination about whether or not a project is viable here to submit an application for?
Absolutely. So this is one of the many steps of due diligence to determine the viability of a wind project in a particular area. As it goes with Met towers and SODAR units, we typically collect data for up to 4 years. We need a minimum of 2 to 3 years of data collected in order to properly determine project viability. If that determination isn't strong enough at 2 to 3 years, we would go slightly longer than that to 4 years, and that's why we're applying for up to 5 years of permitted use here. The particular factors as to what satisfies the criteria that, hey, that the wind resource in this area is good enough for us and we can disassemble the tower at 2 years. I don't know that answer particularly, but in my experience that these towers are erected for typically a period of 4 years, but we need a minimum of 2 to 3 in order to collect that information.
John, this is Commissioner Kelly, and just a couple of questions. My first question is around the percentage of time. I mean, I'm going to assume that this is some investment from NextEra to do this work. Can you give me an idea of how often you start to put up a tower and see whether there's viability for the project? How often it translates into the project being done? Is that 95% of the time, 50% of the time?
That's a good question. So If you're asking what percentage of the time that a Met Tower gets erected, does the project actually end up being developed into completion? It's not a statistically significant amount. It would not be close to 95%. Met Towers are one of the initial methods of data collection that we do for due diligence in any project or potential project area. So there are projects that are in the very early stages of development all the time that have Met Towers and SODAR units erected or placed that don't end up occurring.
And then my second question is, we got one of these applications in November, and then here's another one again. Do you have any plans or do you have any other applications on file for additional Met Towers in this area?
Not at this time. There is potential for one additional SODAR unit in the future. The reason that we're not able to provide that with this iteration of permit requests is simply because we are working on getting an agreeable landowner to in the particular area that we need to host the SODAR unit. So we had the initial one in November. We have these 5 today, and then with potential for one additional. No guarantees of that though.
Thank you.
Okay, microphone's on. Sorry, I'm getting used to this new audio system still. One question to piggyback off Commissioner Kelly's question now. Can you give us a sense of, I guess, the relevance of, well, let's see, if approved today, 2 Met Towers, 4 SODAR units with the potential of 1 additional SODAR unit. I guess, why that many, and what potential size project is it representative of? Does that question make sense? Is it a certain scale that requires you to have a certain number of these devices to collect data across a certain area? Can you give us those numbers?
Sure. Yeah, this is in line with a standard wind project of ours. It's the total number of 4 SODAR units, or with potential for 5, and then 2 additional Met Towers. Just looking at it in abstract, the SODAR units and Met Towers capture data for approximately 3 to 5 square kilometers. So translating that into acres, that's between 750 and 1250 acres. So in this case, it's not necessarily representative of the total project area, but it does enable us to gather the wind resource necessary within that project or potential project area to determine wind viability. This number of units in particular is not different from many wind projects that we conducted. There really isn't a huge correlation between the size of the project and any particular number of units. Larger ones would have a couple of additional units, but 4 SODAR units and 2 Met Towers is commonplace for us.
I have one follow-up question. So if you're usually requiring 2 to 3 years of data, possibly 4 years of data to determine project viability, if we're just looking at general time frame, what is the earliest likely time when an application might be put together for Douglas County?
Absolutely. In this particular case, we do not have a permit application to present to Douglas County at this time. We understand that Douglas County is currently in the process of redrafting new wind regulations. It is not, to answer the question more specifically, it is not uncommon for the due diligence associated with the data collection from the Met Towers or the SODAR units to be fully complete prior to presenting a permit application. But what it does mean is we need to have a very good sense and be able to sort of project into the future that there is enough wind resource in the area to move forward with the project. So it doesn't necessarily mean these towers will have finished their data collection process by the time we present a permit application, but it will be in the advanced stages of that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other? Sure.
So John, and this is Alan Kloss Anderson with Paul Stanley, I represent NextEra Energy Resources. In the earlier question I think you were asking, which is a good one. It had to do relation to I think the safety zone. So if you have the Met Tower. And John, you might talk about that because this is a small tower with guy wires on it. So I think, John, the question would be in relation to if there's a fatal event with the tower and it falls, where the setbacks that we have here far exceed what would be necessary to keep it onto the property where it's hosted as opposed to another property. So your question would be someone impacted by that, particularly because the guy wires. You might talk about an emergency incident where the tower, for some reason, is impacted and falls.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
So hang
I
on just a second, John. If a commissioner would like to ask that question, they certainly can.
Fair point.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a point of clarification.
And while, thanks for the applause, if we could just keep the applause held in check, please, that'd be great. So commissioners, would you like to hear the answer to that question?
I would be glad to know more about fall zones.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Fall zones are integral to the Met Tower siting process. That's why in this particular application, the nearest property line and nearest road are a minimum of 300 feet. They're 300 feet in this case, and then additionally 2,600 feet going north on the property, and then 3,000 feet from the nearest structure. So our team takes that into account first and foremost to make sure that there is no potential danger for this to cross into roads, onto other property lines, or anywhere near structures.
So there would be no restriction of any land use on the neighboring property values based on the fall zones or any other conditions of the tower.
Correct.
Thanks.
John, I just have one more question, and that's did you not, have you not looked at our packet to see the proposed other location that Commissioner Willie was talking about?
I have reviewed the staff report in detail. I did not necessarily see the alternate location recommendation, however.
And if, I mean, one of the things that we could decide to do tonight is, I suppose, is defer this until you had time to review that second location. Would that set your, I mean, if you're doing 4 years of data collection, does that terribly set your group back?
Not necessarily. The only thing that I would say is we site these towers in a particular spot on somebody's property with elevation taken into consideration. So we would have to go back and review this alternate location, but I would just advise that when we apply for these permits, the particular location on property does have some relevance.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
For later.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Reed, I do have a question for staff. So we heard a comment earlier, and forgive me for not remembering who without taking time to look back at my notes, about sort of the difference, potential difference of applications for at-home businesses and applications for a temporary business use, and what the sort of notification looks like. I can, and Carl, maybe if you can't, Tanya could just clarify what, if there are any differences in those, and just clarify what those steps look like. They may not differ, and I'm not going to pretend to know that without pulling up our code and looking at it.
Hello there, Tanya Voigt. I'm the Zoning and Codes Director. So home-based businesses, I think actually what Tina was referring to actually was a conditional use permit. So it was a property that exceeded what could be approved as a home-based business. Home-based business regulations, as long as a home-based business meets the regulations, it's just processed administratively. So they're super low impact. Typically, they're just office space in a home, sometimes some space in a garage area, but those are processed administratively with our office. But if they get into the higher impacts of home-based businesses, then it pushes them into a conditional use permit. Those conditional use permits then go through the normal process, half-mile notification, and then go through the Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
I may have misunderstood the public comment, but since we're getting some clarity here, it's not a requirement that the neighbors approve it. The neighbors can come and provide some public comment. They're noticed about it, but the approval still rests with the Douglas County Commission.
You're correct.
Okay, thanks. No one's up here flinching for one more question, so we will jump into public comment on this item. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Carl. So I have a list of folks who would like to provide public comment on item 3.2. If you're wanting to comment on a specific, there's going to be another presentation on SODAR, right, Carl? So if you have comments about any of the SODAR units, hang in there with us, okay? If you have a comment about the Met Tower, now is a good time for that. So if I read your name off and you're waiting to talk about SODAR, just say, I'm waiting. Otherwise, Jason, you're up first. After Jason is Star.
First, before I start, would it be possible to put the map up on the
Jason, if you
screen?
could get closer to that microphone, no one will hear you. And the map, yes, Carl is saying yes.
Actually, the map of the landowners. It was like 2 slides down from where you're at, Carl. While he's doing that, just want to say Carl was very helpful in answering questions. Appreciate the time that he spent. All right, I'm a time myself, but you can flag me down. All right, Jason Hefner, first and foremost, I want to thank the commissioners for your time and consideration for all landowners and comments. I'm the property owner to the south. We own that property right next to Jerry McElhaney. This tower is expected to be 300 feet from our property line. I know many other people have relevant comments, but I want to spend my 3 minutes on 2 points. First, I want to ask the commission to deny this permit for the Met Tower. My family's been in this county for 155 years, farming, ranching, running businesses, involved in the community. My children are the 6th generation in this county. My family was here before this building was built. Our roots run deep. I've attended many public educational meetings put on by NextEra in Douglas County and Osage County to be informed and educated. I've been thorough. In a review of my notes from those educational meetings, there was some discussion about some limitation of structure height within a certain radius of towers erected. I can't remember exactly the parameters and what they are, but it was something to the effect that you cannot build a 35-foot tall structure or a 45-foot tall structure. I don't know the exact parameters, but it was something to that effect within 1,100 feet of a tower. Again, those are rough numbers from my notes. I asked the commission, if you do approve this for whatever reason, that you require this tower be moved 1,200 feet to the north of our property line. Mr. McElhaney owns the property to the west. He owns the property to the north. I'm sure he would not object since he's leasing this property. As a non-participating landowner whose property borders Mr. McElhaney to the south, I do not believe our property rights should be restricted or infringed based on placing a tower within 300 feet of our property line. Secondly, we're farmers. In our farming operation, we use airplane spray coops to take care of our crops. I've confirmed with David McFarland, the owner of Vinland Airport, that a tower 300 foot from our property presents serious danger to pilots and can limit the tools that we have available to run our business. With my last time, 10 seconds, I ask the commission to understand the limitations that applicants place on their property owners so that all rights are protected, to deny this permit, ask for it to be moved, and thank you for your time.
Star. After Star is Chuck.
Hi. I'll try not to say the word particular too many times. We are asking for this to be not denied, obviously, because it does infringe on our own property rights. There's also, I mean, we have a spring that goes through our property and crosses right into theirs, where they're gonna put it. We have migratory birds everywhere, which I know people know the crazy bird lady out there, but and not in addition to the crop planes, which is constant, during the seasons, those are low, and there's a whole bunch of them going on at once right there, and it's kind of cool and whatever, but they will be affected dramatically by that as well. As well as the, I don't know if it's Ford or whatever, but they do the military does these, helicopter runs all the time at night, very low, where it's very low. So I feel like that would also be somewhat of a danger possibly in that scenario. And it's just, I don't think they should have the right to come in and destroy our land, and they don't really have an answer to any questions. With the history they've had, it just doesn't make sense. If they had, if it was a different company with a better reputation and, maybe give us a little bit more notice and some more information on what they are in the first place, that would help as well. But we don't want them. I mean, I'm directly across the street from this one, the Sodar thing. So and we live at 3 East 150 Road. I mean, there's one and one, it's like one North Road and one East Road right there. And I don't want them. They pose a lot of issues. So there.
Thank you. Chuck. And then Lori.
Hi, I'm Chuck Farrell. I live at 438 Woodson Road, Overbrook. I'm actually a Franklin County resident, but my house faces this property. It's 3.6. I'm on 3.6. And I've appraised real estate in this area for 18 years. I'm retired now. And these type of projects will really affect your property value. I mean, big time. And when I look out my front window, because my house faces north, I want to see corn and beans. I don't want to see a big tower. All the red-tail hawks we have, the eagles, the deer, I think it's all going to be affected. And that's all I've got to say.
Lori and then Alan. Okay, thanks, Lori. Alan. And after Alan, Marcia.
Yes, my name is Alan Cheever. I'll try to be a little shorter this time than I was last time. I'm directly affected by the tower that's getting ready to go in across the street from me. Mr. Hefner, everything he said, I pretty much agree with. We're in the same neighborhood. His property line is a little closer to mine. I think he said his is maybe 400, mine's 500 to my driveway. I have 53 acres of native grass there, which migratory birds and quail and stuff live in. So they fly in this area. I also, on Mr. Hefner's property, there's a family of owls and there's a couple covey of quail that live within probably 500 feet of where this tower is going in. I'll guarantee you, they're not going to like it, especially with the guide wires. I think the commissioners need to think about the gateway into our county. Not only this road, this 550 road is a north-south road, and Lone Star Lake and Clinton Lake are the main gateways to these lakes. So you pull off 56 highway, which is the east-west, you go north and south, and that leads into these lakes. But it also leads into the south part of Lawrence. So now we're talking about the gateway to our county. So do we want these towers? You know, yeah, this tower, you know, I've heard anything from 1 year to 5 years. And, you know, I mean, what the answer is going to be, I really don't know. But I don't want it at all. And if it does come, I agree with Mr. Hefner where it should be put up at the top of the hill. The reason I say that, the top of that hill and the elevation of where they want to put this tower, there's 60-foot difference. So the first thing we can do, we can cut off 60 feet off that tower. And I'll do it personally if they need somebody to do it. So I don't want to hear a bunch of crying or whining about having to cut something off the tower, because I will do it personally and be responsible for it. So that's my thoughts on this. Also, I guess the comment made about Mr. McElhaney's that he is going to be the person that leases this land to NextEra. He owns, just like was previously said, that property of ground there, that 80 acres. So he's got a 1/4 mile road frontage there. So basically there's enough room, I feel, and even if he had to set it back south a little bit, that if that tower is to fall over, it's not going to bother our Douglas County Emergency Management Tower or the Douglas County Water Tower. But why would you put a tower on the lowest area instead of the highest area? You can build a shorter tower, less guide wires, less disruption, less visual blocking of the horizon or whatever you want to say. I get my sign here, it says, please stop. So I guess I'm a little windy here, but I feel pretty strongly about this. And I think we need to really take a hard look at it. So I appreciate it and thank you all.
I want to be clear, we're not going to penalize Alan for that terrible pun on being windy. Marcia and then Michael.
Well, you said we could talk now or the SODAR part. Well, mine's on both. So I'm just gonna,
That's fine.
okay.
Go ahead.
My name's Marcia Pohl. I live in southern Douglas County. One thing that gentleman just said I thought was really amazing is that he has a covey of quail. You know, quail are getting less and less in Douglas County. And I mean, we don't really hear very many around like they used to be. So they need to be protected. And another thing I just will pass along is recently my grandson, who is an avid bird watcher, he and another neighbor actually saw a prairie chicken south of us. And most prairie chickens aren't here, they're out west. We used to have flock up right east of the big tower on the highway. We used to have flock there. And when I was growing up, a little bit to the west, where the first tower's going in, there were prairie chicken. And so you guys putting up these, or whoever's putting these up, you're really hurting our wildlife. Okay, I have a question, and that is, I know you can't answer it, but it's just thrown out there. Why do we need these towers put up in the first place? There are already reports showing where in our state is most beneficial for wind energy. The U.S. Department of Energy shows Douglas County as being marginal to poor to put in wind energy. And you can find that on a site. Also, I find it interesting how that ambient noise, which will affect and monitor the level of the reception to the signal to the collector of those SODAR. They're not towers, but SODAR things. They need to be, it needs to be less than 40 decibels for them to be able to read. And then here in our draft, you're wanting to put 50 decibels for us to listen to when the towers are turning, which is too high according to the World Health Organization, which says it should be less than 45 in the daytime. At night, it should be even less than that. So I will show you one picture, which if I can get my hands to work for me. Okay, this is a picture of the Douglas County, of state map. And over here in the lighter areas, that is where the white is port, and Douglas County has, okay, I'm shaking, you probably can't see, but it has white in it, and some of it is in the southern part of our county. And so really, and as many people as we have living in our county, it's really, it's not feasible to put them in here. And like I say, there are already studies out there showing that it's poor to marginal whether to put anything here. Thank you.
Michael and then Stephanie.
Thank you again, commissioners. And I want to say thanks for asking some questions earlier that I think we were all interested in hearing the answer to, but I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get answers to percent viability. We got vague answers and a lot of squirming. We also didn't get answers to the number of units that may eventually show up on 1,250 acres of impacted land within all of the measurement instruments that they're planning on putting. But I was also disappointed in the assessment given on the impact or the lack of impact of putting up this particular Met Tower. And, I think that it immediately impacts all residents because it impacts their ability to manage the future of their property as they might be entitled to be. Imagine 2 to 4 years this thing is sticking up in the sky as a big red beacon for everybody to see. Coming soon, industrial wind. It may or may not happen. Are you going to invest in your property over those 2 to 4 years, or are you going to be looking to sell? Are the realtors that represent Douglas County going to be telling potential buyers or having to disclose to potential buyers, hey, you know what? A 1,250 acre industrial wind farm or wind monstrosity, can't call it a farm, may eventually show up here. So what are these people going to do? Sit around for 2 or 3 or 4 years and wait for some type of resolution, some type of indication whether those things are going to be built? Are they going to want to get out? Are they going to invest? Are they going to suffer? So I think we all need to pull back a little bit and just say no. No to the tower, no to the SODAR. Put a moratorium on this, study it more. We have the time, apparently, it's not urgent. But we have to respect this land and we respect the people who live in it and respect that just putting this tower up, even this innocuous so-called tower, is going to have an impact on this county. Thank you.
Stephanie and then Linda.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Nauber. We live at 354 Woodson Road, and the corner of our property is at N1 and E150 Road. We are actually on the southeast side, but my question is, and this has not been addressed, I don't think directly. I want to know how this is going to affect livestock. We raise livestock, not only for show, but for food as well. Nobody, I have not heard anything. We've seen how we've talked about how it's going to, impact different things, but not directly, is it our life, what is it going to do? What is it really going to do? I've seen studies that the sonar and the chirping and the things like that, that's going to disrupt the functionality of not only humans, but animals as well. And I'm not willing to risk my livestock for something that I don't think is worth having there. We live literally it's literally in a valley. I don't see what point putting this SODAR equipment there is going to do. I mean, it literally, it's pointless putting anything there. And also too, I know people have talked about how it impacts the birds and the migratory things. And we have bald eagles that come out there. No one's mentioned those as well. So there you go. I don't know whether they're still on the endangered list, but I've seen them out that way. There's a lot more questions that we could ask. We could probably spend all evening asking questions. And I know we only got a short period of time, but that is my main concern. And I would say a vote no for putting this out there because it's going to impact more than just us.
Thank you. Linda? Thank you, Linda. Anyone else who'd like to give public comment on the Met Tower?
I think I'm in the appropriate zone here to talk now. So I appreciate your time
Can you
tonight.
lift that mic just a little bit? Thank you.
I live on Lone Star Lake and have some concerns regarding the environmental piece of this. I'm noticing we have a lot of bird watchers and bird fans, and I'm one of them.
Can you give us your name, please?
Yes, my name's Rebecca Martis.
Thank you.
I've lived in Douglas County for 30 years and bulk of that out at Lone Star. And now I need to take my glasses off so I can see my writing. First, I'd like to start by reading a quote from a study done by the Kansas Biological Survey in 2014 and 2015. Quoting, Douglas County should take pride in its remnants of viable, high-quality prairie and tracts on high-quality forests. These areas are an integral part of our culture and heritage. They are the last examples of the pre-settlement vegetation and represent the landscape occupied by Native people for millennia. They provide many benefits to the public, including flood control, water quality improvement, recreational support, and aesthetic enjoyment of the outdoors. Our remaining natural areas also provide habitat for some of the state's sensitive and declining species, including pollinators. They're also important locally for educational and research opportunities. For years, I have watched the eagles nesting at Lone Star, and I find great joy in watching them raise their young, hunt in the area, teaching the young to fly. That is exciting to me. I feel everyone's concern with this Met Tower going in, that it is paving the way towards turbine complex construction. Let's see here. I have some reservations about the company collecting this information. I'm not sure if you're aware, but last year, ESI, a subsidiary of NextEra Energy, was fined $8 million and pled guilty to 3 counts of violating the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Quoting from the Attorney General of the Justice Department on Environmental and Natural Resources. For more than a decade, ESI violated wildlife laws, taking eagles without obtaining or even seeking necessary permits. So I feel concerned that although they may be able to take an eagle, which is okay, the government has said it's okay to take an eagle if a wind turbine hits it, or if they hit a tower, they will have to pay for it. However, I feel like that is just not acceptable.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Good evening. My name is Kellen Gaston. I live at 947 and 500 Road. Not much I could say that all of these fine people haven't already said tonight. So it's simple. I ask you not to approve these temporary business permits on tonight's agenda, all of them. I ask for a moratorium of all the CUPs, of all the temporary business use permits for at least 6 months. But more importantly, until we can get the regulations approved, we need to figure out what we're gonna do and then move on. You are in fact voting on wind regulations tonight. You are. These MET and SODAR units are the first step in commercial wind in Douglas County. So let's say no. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lois Ardall and I live on 550 Road. My question is, that has not been brought up. Our internet server, Mercury Wireless, sits on that tower by the water tower. Is that going to affect our internet? Because everybody out there has that internet and we have problems with it as is. So is this really going to make it a lot worse? But nobody said anything about our internet service. And everybody out there, home businesses, everybody will be affected. Because there's quite a few in our area that work from home. Thank you.
Don't forget to sign in, Louise, Lois, don't forget to sign in. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Martha Kaufman. I own a farm at 624 North 100 Road. I actually live right west of town, a mile west of Highway 10, right north of Clinton Lake. If you stand on our roof, you can see the lake. But I'm here because of our farm located in southern Douglas County. It is a beautiful area. And the reason I decided to go ahead and come forward and speak is because I've been to several hearings and I've not heard anyone mention concern about interfering with the Santa Fe Trail. That's a real historic part of our county. And I am a little disappointed in the comment that, well, we can't see any ruts in the road, so clearly nobody cares. A lot of and I am an anthropologist by training. A lot of archaeology these days is done not by looking on the surface area for ruts in the road. There can be a lot of artifacts buried even deep beneath the soil. So the fact that in some of this area it's been plowed and cultivated doesn't mean that there aren't artifacts there. A lot of archaeological sites now begin with surveillance with drones that have particular ability to look for artifacts that are in the earth. And this tower appears to be sitting basically on the curb of the Santa Fe Trail. And that really concerns me. I think that that is an area of the county and that historic site in the county that we really need to work to preserve to make sure that it doesn't erode further. And while I certainly understand that people who have that running through their territory have the right to go ahead and cultivate their land and graze their cattle. I think it's a little different when you start talking about installing towers that are going to go down into the earth. And that is why I chose to speak tonight. I really think that's something that we do need to act to preserve in our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment on the Met Tower?
Hello, Trisha Webb. I live outside of Overbrook, Kansas. And I would urge you to seek a moratorium on this. You approved the first Met Tower in November. And I would be curious as to why, if they knew that they were going to need multiple, why didn't they apply for all of them then? And now they're applying for 5 more on top of the 1. I believe it's because they were anticipating building a wind farm in Osage County. They were not anticipating Osage County voting no. So they were expecting to not have to pay more people for their information. They know about the area that they want to put these wind turbines in because they've been collecting contracts since 2013. They're still trying to get contracts. And I believe that once you let them in, they will take over Douglas County. They will continue over to the transmission lines that they want to build. They will try and connect into Franklin County as well. And if they could, they'd keep going, but they can't go to Shawnee County because Shawnee County has banned them. Osage County's banned them, and Waubonsee County. All the higher wind areas where you would expect, you know, obviously that's where they went to first. And they've banned them. Why? Because they want to preserve their land. They want people to move in. You want growth? You're not going to put up wind turbines. You're going to ask for people to move in. Thank you.
Let's see if I can read my scratching. My name is Catherine Ellsworth. I live in Eudora, Kansas. In this context, my main concern is procedural injustice because it's a common phenomenon in the siting of utility scale wind facilities. NextEra has been collaborating with Douglas County since they submitted their first CUP applications for 2 Met towers in 2013. At that time, staff recommended that the Met Tower be applied for under a conditional use permit. In 2014, the Board of County Commissioners continued to have study sessions with NextEra, but they did implement the first of 4 moratoriums against utility scale wind facilities. NextEra, as Tower Associates, also began an 18-month campaign to get Douglas County landowners to sign leases, resulting in 23 signed leases in 2014. That year, NextEra again submitted 2 CUPs for 2 Met towers. Other states and even other Kansas counties permit Met towers with conditional use permits. So my question is, why is the county now allowing them to apply for Met tower permits using the business use permit? A CUP application would at least go through the Planning Commission and, more significantly, would have allowed neighbors to submit a protest petition. Since I've witnessed the county openly inviting NextEra to participate in writing their own regulations for both solar and wind, I'm concerned that changing the Met towers to a temporary business use permit was strategic and initiated out of the public eye. Thanks. Thank you.
Hello there, Mr. Chair and committee commissioners. My name is Carrie Barth and I live at 135 East 1300 Road in Douglas County. I think there's a lot of great questions and I am very proud to represent most of these people in here, not everybody, but I would be proud to represent everyone else that's here as well. I have an invitation for you all from a person that lives in Waverly area for you to go have a free steak dinner on their back patio, for you to experience it firsthand what it would be like for all of these folks to actually live next to these wind turbines. I have a lot of concerns also about what everybody else has said. I have met with one of the Nextera lobbyists. I asked a lot of questions and they all basically were turned into solar, were unanswered. I've asked for information and follow-up. The person was supposed to get it to me today. She did not. She wants to meet tomorrow afternoon. But I asked for a lot of different things. And one of the things I wanted to know, and these are things that are important for you also to ask, is what are all the different local, state, and federal governmental permits and approvals that the operator needs? For example, I was at the Planning Commission meeting here last week in reference to a tower for cellular services, and that tower was a specific height. And the FAA regulations that they look at only looks at like the light on it, which is basically all that this looks at. It doesn't look at flight patterns. It doesn't look at the Department of Defense. It doesn't look at what McConnell Air Force Base, what Whiteman Air Force Base, what Forbes Tower or Forbes Field also looks at with our Department of Defense and our national security, which are flight patterns and the need to be able to fly low over the earth to protect our security here of our great nation. So those are things that I would be asking as well as to what would they need to be able to actually have these and make them where they could be safe in addition to all the other concerns that everybody else brought up. I also would wonder what would have these folks even actually met with the property owners to ask them where they would be okay with this tower going. I don't know if you've all have seen any of the contracts that are swirling around that actually state the rules and what it says in their contract, but there is actually no right for the property owner to have a say. That should be concern on what these contracts even look like with the property owners. They should have a say as well as us that are non-property owners or non-participating property owners. And then I have something to say about SODAR, so I'll wait for the next time if I have more time to do that as well. I'll save it for the SODAR. Thank you.
Any other public comment on Met Towers? We've already had your 3 minutes, sorry. Anybody online, Sarah?
Some folks online, we'll move them into the panel. Catherine Morgan, you're into the panel. You can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, again, Catherine Morgan, 68 East 150th. I am not a landowner that's going to be at this time affected by a Met Tower, but I would offer this as I listened to the comments and I looked at the presentation that was provided. Do you find it interesting that they say that they have to install these towers in order to obtain wind data and the viability of a project for the next 5 years? But this data is already publicly known and is maintained by the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. There is government data at many levels about our weather patterns across the country and around the globe. How do you think our weather apps work on our phone? Why is there even a need to install towers on anyone's property? They already know what the weather patterns are. They already know what the wind patterns are. They know what the typical average wind speeds are. They already know this information. There is no need when there is publicly accessed government data that is available to them for this purpose. I would also like the commission to consider that, again, you know, we appreciate the fact that you are in these roles and that you are serving our community. And I would like to remind the commission that, again, it is your obligation to represent the community that you have either been elected to or that you are being paid by the tax dollars that support your salaries. And it is your obligation to best represent the opinions and the desires of the community that you represent. And I've been now on this call for almost 2 hours, and I have not heard one positive comment to say that anybody would want these towers or these, you know, units anywhere or turbines on their land. Not one. I think that's an overwhelming sign to the commission of how your community and your constituents feel about what is going on. And I think the commission would do well to listen to their community. Thank you.
We have a couple more. Kira, you're in the panel. If you could unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me? I can't see it.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. My name is Kyra Martinez. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I have some comments after hearing the developers speak. Why have people signed leases already? Why is the developer already asking people to sign up? Why would they do that if they didn't already have the data they need to make this a viable project? Why would they waste their time canvassing the area, knocking on doors, holding meetings for people to sign up if they didn't already think this would work? You're telling me that they need these testing towers in order to get their data to see if they want to move forward with the massive wind turbine complex? They've already proved that they want to move forward because people have already signed leases. They already have the data they need. This is just a stepping stone for them, a way for them to get their foot in the door. You open that door, you are opening Pandora's box. The developer kept referring to the fact that one of these towers was already approved back in November, meaning you already opened that door once. You already approved one of these towers in the past. But I implore you to not approve any more of these towers going forward. Shut the door on this now. The residents of Douglas County that live in the unincorporated areas and who will be directly impacted by this do not want this. Are you listening? What's the saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Don't let these developers fool us again. Lastly, who's watching the hired land agents that are supposed to be making sure everything is working properly and that everything is on the up and up? We're just supposed to trust them and take their word on it. Who's policing them? I vehemently ask you to deny this application. Thank you.
Eric Martis is in the panel. Eric, you can unmute yourself and provide your comments. You've got 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Eric Martis. I'm a resident at Lone Star Lake, just north of the area of the proposed MET tower. First of all, I just want to thank everyone there for hearing our words. Personally, I'm concerned with issues pertaining to the environment. I'm interested in wind and solar energy, albeit on a smaller level, personal and community scale, rather than the large industrial wind installation. The area from Globe to Clinton Lake, which goes up 1029 there, 550 Road, is a veritable bird highway, like a super conduit of migratory birds. Canada geese, all species of ducks, hawks, harriers, bald eagles. It's an amazing place for the migratory birds. And the staff brief indicated earlier that these guideline towers, such as this MET tower, can and do result in bird kill. If the larger product, or rather the larger project, if the data collected from the tower shows that it's a viable place for this future wind project, then of course this would result in a massive impact in terms of bird kill. And this is a really unacceptable result. As an environmentalist who is interested in green energy, I find this particular thing to be very scary. I mean, the small MET tower, as per the staff brief, it doesn't sound too bad. You know, it's not going to be in the ground. It's temporary, but it's a prelude to a much bigger project. And I believe that the commissioners should say no to industrial scale wind projects in southern Douglas County. And I would implore you to impose a moratorium on this until when regulations are finalized and all the commissioners are seated. And with that, I thank you for listening.
Michael Hart is being moved into the panel. Just a reminder to anyone online, if you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Michael, you're in the panel. You can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I just have a couple of brief comments. So this is being considered under a temporary business use permit. And it says that they need a minimum of 2 to 3 years and maybe up to 5 years. That doesn't seem very temporary to me. A temporary business use permit would be for like a festival or repaving a parking lot or something that takes, few days, few weeks, maybe even a few months. But because it's under this temporary business use permit, there's no environmental review. And I object to that. I think that, due to the length of time that they're wanting to put this tower up, and the potential impacts to, wildlife and migratory birds, as mentioned by other folks, I think that this should go through the regular, go through a regular permitting process through the planning committee, so that there's more time to study it, more time to review it, that kind of thing. And so I'll yield back the rest of my time. That's all I have.
Commissioners, we don't have any other hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, we'll bring it back up to the commission for discussion. Any further questions and possible motions?
Usually on planning items, we also allow the applicant to respond to public comment. Is that something you'd like to do, Mr. Chair?
John, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do have a few points of rebuttal or reply. There were obviously many comments during the public comment period, but just to hit on a few questions or comments. Someone did speak about potential impact to livestock. We are more than willing to provide cattle guards around every guy wire, the actual structure of the Met Tower itself, and that can be added as a condition of approval by the commission. If that is a concern, we would be happy to comply with that particular condition. As far as bird impacts, I did speak about this at good length in November, but we do attach bird and bat diverters to the guy wires and the structure, not in compliance with any requirement, but just at the recommendation of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. This is a rather new technology that we've been able to deploy with newer Met Towers, and it's proven to have reduced bird strikes or any impacts in that way at a fairly significant level. Discussions about deciding process with the landowner. The landowner absolutely has a voice when they're choosing the location of this tower on their property. In addition to our internal or county level setbacks, and understanding where wind resource is within the property, the property owner is the person who has to sign off on the exhibit at the location. So without their consent, the tower could not be placed in the area it is placed. So I would additionally advise the commission to consider that point when thinking about a recommendation of potentially moving the tower. There would have to be additional negotiations with the landowner. This might, a condition like that might set back the Met Tower placement process. We might not necessarily have a willing landowner at that point anymore. And that would in that instance cause delays. But I would like to make it clear that the landowner absolutely has a say in the placement of the tower on their property. And that is really all I could think of at this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Carl or Tanya, can you talk a little bit, the question that came up about temporary business versus CUP process and why it went to this?
Yes. The short answer is that in the staff review, this meets the criteria to be approved as a temporary business use. Those 2 Met Towers that were approved in 2014 were approved as conditional use permits. I spoke to the planner who worked on those applications. At that time, the county didn't have any adopted wind regulations. And at that time, it was believed that it would be best to process those similar to how we'd process a cell tower. And then after the wind regulations would be adopted, they could be processed as temporary business uses.
Thank you.
Both for staff and also for John as the applicant. There was a conversation or a point raised about interference with internet providing from that tower. I know we've talked that we have a condition that the emergency response radio tower can't be interfered with as critical infrastructure, and neither can the water tower. Can it be possible to add that there cannot be any interference with the internet signal from Mercury Wireless from that tower also specifically?
The commission may choose to add that to that condition.
Would you like me to speak to that? I'm sorry.
I think that is likely a condition that the commission will ask for if we get to that point. So we'll hold off on that for now. Carl, ask another question. In terms of what was raised was who manages the land managers for that property. Can you talk about what your office does and how that is managed?
We wouldn't really any role in it's defined land manager, but I think what the land agent was referring to was be representatives of Nextera.
I think the question is, what's our process in the county for if neighbors see something that is not going according to what was agreed by the county commission, who do they report to? How's that managed? Who's watching that? And we'd also have the condition on here that the county can have access to that property for any reason that it wants to within 24 hours. So can you talk about that?
Appreciate the clarification.
That kind of thing would be complaint driven. So any member of the public would be willing to give us a call or send us an email at zoning@douglascountyks.org, and then we'd be happy to look into it.
I'm not going to follow up on that. Okay. Carl, my question is about the crop air dusting. Yes. Can you talk about that? Because that was specifically talked about in the application about whether it was close to airports, and now we're hearing that there are planes that fly near there. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
The FAA requirement is that since it's under 200 feet, it doesn't have to have a blinking light on the top of it. As far as any other aviation impacts, I would defer to the applicant to answer any questions.
Yes, absolutely. To speak to the height of the tower within FAA guidelines. So the tower at 197 feet is not required by the FAA to have any sort of light fixture on it. We do that, understanding that 200 feet is a sort of speed limit established by the FAA, that above that there would be some level of risk. So that is the reason the tower is the height that it is. However, the tower has to be painted in an alternating white and orange in most instances, but an alternating color for high visibility. And additionally, internally, we do have to check, perform a check with the FAA as to whether or not there will be any additional review from them required. The nature of the structure is fairly commonplace, but the location is what needs to be reviewed by the FAA. We are able to do that internally using an FAA website. If the location is deemed to need further review, we will, of course, comply and submit for that.
John, this is Commissioner Kelly. I'm going to assume you have put up these Met Towers before and that you have done it in agricultural spaces where crop dusting occurs. Do you have any instances where crop dusting planes have crashed into these Met Towers?
Not to my knowledge, no.
This is Commissioner Reed. I just want to follow up on some of our questions earlier, and then we heard some comments in response about the potential for a different location. And so earlier you made comments that that there's very specific elements to the siting of the location, and you just clarified that also the landowner has a say. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? I think that there's some interest. I have interest in understanding as much as you know to explain what some of those siting specifics are. And then also if there were to be a request for consideration of a different site on that property and discussion with the landowner, what does that timeline look for you? You know, I assume it's not you who's going out and doing the surveying for siting. So what would that process look like if we were to ask you to reconsider other locations?
Absolutely. We have internal setbacks for property lines, roads, other households, other structures that we need to abide by when siting the Met Tower. Within that, there is particular wind resource data that we look at a desktop level, much more general wind resource data when siting the tower. But an additional point is at the end of the day, we need a willing landowner who is interested in having this tower on their property. So we go through a process with them of reviewing potential locations and recommending some, and the landowner themselves can also recommend a location, and we have to come to an agreement because this is a private agreement that the landowner has to sign off on the exhibit of the exact location of the tower as it is proposed. So in the event that there is a request to move the location of this tower on this particular property with the landowner, we would have to go back and negotiate with the landowner, potentially resite the tower, or we would have to resite the tower. If the landowner is not agreeable to that, they would then, you know, be released from their contract. They would be released from any agreement that they've signed. So then we would begin a new search within, you know, the established route, or, you know, this is not necessarily my wheelhouse of specifically where within the wind resource data the Met Tower could be sited, but within that corridor, we would have to find an additional willing landowner. So there is no way for me to effectively predict who would be that person. It could take, you know, a short period of time. It could take months to longer than that. So understanding that these agreements are entirely voluntary, there is a bit of variability. If the commission requires as a condition of approval that the tower be resited within that landowner's property, there is no guarantee that they would be willing to do that.
John, a follow-up question. And I have to say, I've asked you this already and you've answered it already, but I'm going to ask it again just for extra clarification. So there are no restrictions on any of the neighboring landowners based on the location of that tower so far? No restrictions on what a landowner can do with their land other than the non-participating landowner?
No. no, there is no restrictions to any neighboring landowners.
Thank you.
And so I apologize if I'm willing to add an additional comment. Alan is there in person. He has a long track record of working with wind projects in the state of Kansas. I think he could better clarify any history with crop dusters as it relates to Met Towers.
I would be glad to ask Alan Anderson those questions.
Yeah, so again, we have 43 wind projects. The first one was in 2001, so we're kind of working past 22 years of range. All of that Met Towers, all of them are in agricultural area. All of them have crop dusting around them. It's not a problem. There's never been a crash in the state of Kansas with one. We were just up on another project, up at the High Banks project, met with all the crop dusters. Their point is what we don't like is something we didn't know about. Once we know about it, we're fine. They communicate with the crop dusters to say, okay, there's a tower. It doesn't show up overnight. It does show up one day, but there's communication with them and it's not a problem at all. So in all the project, there's 20-year history on that.
I don't think we have any more questions, so let's get down to the business of discussing and making motions and choices here. First of all, I want to thank all the members of the community that came out. I know for many of you, it's a long drive up here. You care passionately about your land. You are very nervous. I hear it about wind turbine development. I hear that 100%. And I want to thank you for coming up and sharing your thoughts. Thank you for following our 3-minute time limit. And I really appreciate that. I don't necessarily personally find a connection yet to Met Tower development with a wind turbine. I think it's gathering information. And for that, folks, we cannot provide comment and we can just vote or you can just listen. For me personally, I understand that those out there are concerned about that and they're drawing a bright line between those two. For me personally, that's not a bright line. I think we would need to consider projects separately. Right now, we have wind regulations that have not been approved. They have not come to us for approval. We're a long way from actually having wind turbines in Douglas County. I know that it feels scary because we don't know what it is yet. But just for me personally, commissioners, I don't necessarily know that this, as one constituent said, this paves the road for wind turbine development. I think it is a step for sure in understanding whether this area is appropriate for wind development. But to me, that's just one step, and that doesn't mean the next step is forward. The next step may be backwards.
This is Commissioner Reed. I appreciate that, those comments, Commissioner Kelly, and I tend to agree. While I completely understand, there's no way to deny that there's a connection, and even our agenda item in the staff report, specifies, and the applicants have specified that this is an early step in the potential project development. But from where we sit and from our position and in the terms of the process by which things like land use happen through our very detailed code and regulations that are being vigorously updated, there is separate and distinct steps that we have to consider different parts of the process differently. And that an approval of a Met Tower in November when it happened, and potentially this one does not automatically mean that it's a foregone conclusion that a future project will be approved if applied for, because certainly both the data collected through this and the potential final version of whatever our wind regulations will be may very well deter applicants from certain scale projects. We don't know that yet, but we have to respect that there is a process by which we have to develop very specific parameters that we have expectations about any project applications that may come our way, and then consider those each on their own with more information and detail than is even developed or imagined right now, and certainly in front of us. So I think that this temporary business use permit, and I appreciate the explanation from Carl about how why previously there had been some CUP processes, but that preceded the fact that was when the county did not have wind regulations. Now we do, and we are working to vigorously update those. And I know many of you have already been significantly engaged in that process, both in talking to staff and reaching out to planning commissioners. And I encourage that you stay tuned into that conversation, because that is where the questions and concerns answered can be addressed and dug into in much greater detail at that planning commission level in order for them to make further recommendations to us. So I certainly don't deny that there's a connection, and I don't think any company could deny that either, but it does not equal a foregone conclusion that either wind project application is coming or that it will be approved if and when it does come.
Many of you probably know this is also my neighborhood that we're talking about. So I'm right in there with neighbors in terms of the questions and the fears, and we have a long ways to go in terms of getting those questions answered, raising those with the Planning Commission, developing regulations that answer to some of those questions. I also have a strong commitment to the idea of renewable energy, and that we are not going to have the same kind of energy production we've had in the past into the future. And that's a discussion we always have to be having. We're not voting on anything about wind turbines tonight. We can only vote on what is in front of us on the agenda, and that is the Met Tower. Many of the people who come up and express concerns, some of those were about the Met Tower, and some of them were about what comes next. And I think we just have to take one thing at a time. I would also say that the Met Tower that was approved in 2014 that we heard about stood for a couple of years on North 400 Road, very close to my house, and then collected its data and went away. I never heard anything from neighbors about specifically negative impacts from the tower itself. And since we're voting on the tower itself, I am definitely keeping those separate and recognizing that we have just a long way to go for conversations about what does that look like for our community, and is that a fit? Is it not a fit? There's a lot more process to go. Tonight is only the Met Tower.
Okay. This is Commissioner Reed. I will make a motion that we approve ZTBU 2022-0006, a temporary business use permit request from Tower Associates to allow a 60.26 meter Met Tower.
Commissioner Reed, may I offer a couple of conditions to add to that?
Sure.
One condition is to inform crop dusters that work within the Southwest Douglas County area of the position of the Met Tower. And the other is to include within critical infrastructure that is protected under the current conditions, sources for internet access that comes from the data tower the tower that is located with the water tower.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. I'm going to look to staff and make sure that those condition suggestions are clear and understood, Carl. Or if you need any clarification before we move ahead.
One condition being the applicant shall inform area crop dusters of the location of the Met Tower prior to installation. And the second one is to add the line internet service into that condition with the water tower and the emergency communications tower.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Commissioner Reed, again, I will go ahead and amend my previous motion to include those conditions.
Before I second, I want to get Commissioner's sense of this idea of deferral to look at a different location and to see where we think about, what we think about that. We've heard about it up on a hill and we've heard it, down where it is now. Is there any interest in pursuing that at all, or do we just want to approve as is?
I have had my largest concerns answered.
I would agree, and I think after understanding the process for citing and the landowner's participation and knowing that that was a factor, I feel like it's within our purview to move ahead with the recommendation that staff gave us based on what the applicant and landowner have already agreed to.
I also, for the record, don't love the location. It is as far from the property owner's house as it could be within that plot of land, and I recognize that, and I'm not particularly happy about it, but I'm not enough to stop the project at this point.
Yeah, and I just wanted to see if there was any, I wanted to make sure we talked about it. It fits within the requirements of distance of setback. So I'm not sure I understand the request and appeal. My one worry was if we move it, then we have a different group of people who come up with another location. And we're constantly sort of coming back here trying to find the right location. So I just wanted to check in on that since that was something that I had asked some questions about. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll go ahead and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. We have been at this for 2.5 hours. We're going to talk about SODAR here in just a little bit because we are going to take commissioners a 5-minute break. Is that enough time? Okay, we will be back here at 8:05. We get started here again. If you could find your seats. I hear they're not very comfortable. I'm sorry about that. Welcome to a very old courthouse. Okay, we're going to consider the next items, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6 in one presentation. Is that right, Carl? We will do separate motions on each
That's
one.
correct.
Okay. So these are the next item is for temporary business use permits for NextEra Energy for Tower Associates to allow sonic detection and ranging systems to be located on the following properties, generally between North Side, North 200 Road and East 900 Road and East 1000 Road. Generally described as being between southwest of the intersection of North 600 Road and East 450 Road. Generally described as the west side of East 550 Road between North 100 and North 1 Road. And generally described as being northeast of the intersection of North 1 Road and East 150 Road. Take it away, Carl.
Thank you. So as Commissioner Kelly said, this presentation is on items 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6. These are all temporary business use requests requesting placement of a SODAR unit. So I'll show this map again. Each of the properties highlighted in green are the locations where the SODAR units are being proposed. So a little bit of background, these permit requests are for 4 sonic detection and ranging units. These units are about the size of a pickup truck. They're mounted on an 8-foot trailer, and then they're parked out in a field. They do make a chirping sound every second or every couple seconds or so. Sonic detection and ranging, or SODAR, is a form of remote sensing, sort of like radar is radio detection and ranging, where a radio wave is emitted and it tells you how far away a storm system is or an airplane is. Sonic detection and ranging means it's emitting a sound and measuring the return, and that gives you data on wind speed, direction, and turbulence. These SODAR units are used to collect data on weather patterns of a specific site to gauge the viability of potential wind energy projects. And these applications, just like the Met Tower application, is for a SODAR unit only, not for turbines, not for a wind energy project. Those are not being considered with this application. The machine is parked there temporarily for up to 5 years. There's no foundation, there's no permanent structures, and it's not anchored to the ground. So all 4 of these locations, the surrounding land uses are primarily agricultural with some scattered houses nearby. There are also some churches and cemeteries out there. Some additional land uses for some of the other properties include art galleries and studios, quarries, paintball parks, and salvage yards. None of these properties are within 3 miles of any city, though Globe, Warden, the community surrounding Lone Star Lake, and Centropolis in Franklin County are all unincorporated and within 3 miles of some of these properties. So going over the locations of each of these, item 3.3, this is on property owned by Clarice Breedlove. This is on the north side of N200 Road between E900 Road and E1000 Road, and this is in Willow Springs Township. Item 3.4, this is on property owned by Charles and Doris Fall. This is southwest of the intersection of N600 and E450 roads. This is in Marion Township. Item 3.5, this is on property owned by Wayne and Gail Hopkins. This is the only one of the properties where there's a house on the property, and the property owners do live in that house. That house is addressed as 51 E550 Road. This property is on the west side of E550 Road between N100 Road and N1 Road, about 1/2 mile north of the Franklin County line. This is also in Marion Township. And then item 3.6, this is property owned by Marcus and Cami Ray. This is northeast of the intersection of N1 Road and E150 Road. This property does border the Franklin County line. This is also within Marion Township, and staff has been made aware of an area of archaeological significance either on or in the area of this property. After speaking with a member of the Heritage Commission, he didn't believe there was any impact considering that the SODAR unit doesn't disturb the soil, it's just parked there. So we don't anticipate any adverse impacts to any potential archaeological sites. As far as the review, as far as adverse impacts on the natural environment, again, there is no environmental review required for a temporary business use. Each of these properties is either entirely or mostly overlain with soils classified as prime farmland or farmland of statewide importance, but we aren't anticipating any adverse impacts because there is no penetration of the soil with these SODAR units. Again, it's just a trailer parked out on a field, and all units being proposed are located outside of the floodplain. As far as detrimental effect on nearby properties, SODAR units do make a chirping sound. They emit that sound into the atmosphere, and it can be heard several hundred feet away. I did have the opportunity to visit a SODAR unit out by Cuba, Kansas, in Republic County. That's just northeast of Concordia. So I walked 300 feet away from it. I could barely hear it. Then I went 700 feet away from it and couldn't hear it at all. The closest any of these SODAR units is to a house is about 1,000 feet. Also, since these are about the size of a pickup truck, they're not very tall. They're not anticipated to hinder any views. As far as public gain, similar to the Met Tower, this provides the applicant's organization with meteorological data to study a potential future wind energy project. For public services, it's mounted on a trailer. It's just rolled onto the property. It's not anticipated to generate any substantial increase in traffic. Surrounding land uses, again, are primarily agricultural with some scattered residences. No conflicts with any of these have been identified. And the applicant has indicated that local land agents will monitor the site, and should any issues arrive, we'll be able to address those. So again, with the notification, this is being processed as a TBU. SODAR units have been processed as TBUs in Douglas County before. There is one approved in 2018. These do not require planning commission consideration, but like a conditional use permit, they require property owner notification within 1/2 mile. For all 4 applications, we sent 76 letters, and that included 10 property owners within Franklin County. This information was also posted on the City of Lawrence's wind energy website, so the public could access it there. Similar to the Met Tower, we sent this out to concerned agencies, didn't receive much feedback back. We did have several rural landowners call us asking about tonight's meeting. We also got a couple of calls from some rural landowners asking if it was possible for NextEra or another wind energy company to park a SODAR unit on their property without their knowledge or without their consent. We advise them that that's not possible. Applicant cannot file an application with our office on someone's property without first submitting a property owner consent form where they have to get the property owner's signature, signing over the right to file an application on their behalf. And that consent form has to be notarized. For all 5 of the applications being considered tonight, we do have those forms on file. And then finally, any written comments that we received have been included in your packet. So here are some site photos from each of the 4 SODAR sites. This is for item 3.3. This is the SODAR unit proposed most closely to a house. It's about 1,000 feet from the nearest neighboring property owner's house. So this is looking north. The proposed SODAR unit would be back by those trees. This is looking down the road at the neighbor's house. Looking from further down the road at the neighbor's house, the SODAR unit would be off to the side back here. And then looking northeast, that house would be over here. And the SODAR unit would be right about here. This is item 3.4 on the property owned by The Falls. This is looking south-southwest along E450 road. The proposed SODAR unit would be located right about here. And then looking at the opposite direction, north-northwest from a more southerly viewpoint, that SODAR unit would be off to the west about here. Item 3.5, this is the property that's developed with a house. So the SODAR unit is way far back on this property, wouldn't be visible from the road. So this is looking in that general direction. It would be behind that house. Then this is looking from a property to the south. That SODAR unit would be way toward the back of the property over in here. Item 3.6, this is the Ray property. This is looking southeast from E150 road. The proposed SODAR unit would be roughly in this area. And then again, looking more straight at it, so it would be toward the center of this photo. And then looking south, this property does have a structure on it, a farm utility building, and that's looking at that farm utility building right there. So I did have the opportunity to go out and take a look at a SODAR unit and listen to it. If the commission is interested, I do have a 15-second video that I can play for you later to give you an idea of what it sounds like. This is a view of what it looks like up close. And then just giving you an idea of the size parked on that 8-foot trailer. So with that, staff is recommending approval for a 1-year period from today through February 1st, 2024, with conditions that this is only for a SODAR unit. There can't be any lighting. The applicant isn't requesting any lighting. The SODAR unit and any additional equipment have to be removed from the property once they're finished with it. They have to obtain an insurance policy and share that proof of insurance with us to satisfy a code requirement. And we also are asking that any change in the property owner, they have to share that with us, continue to follow all the rules, and that they have to renew every year for a period of up to 5 years. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate all your work on this. Commissioners, any questions for Carl?
Well, I want to hear the video clip.
Yeah.
Let me get that set up here.
And Carl, do you also have one from the 300 feet and the 700 feet away?
I did take a video from 300 feet away, but my phone wasn't able to pick up the audio from there. I could barely hear it, but my phone could.
Say that again.
Yes, so I did take a video from 300 feet away, but my phone wasn't able to pick up that chirping sound from that distance, and I could just barely hear it.
Any other questions for Carl? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant, John. John, you're
We can't
muted.
hear you.
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I was actually saying, I'm sorry if I sound different because I had to switch to my phone as my earbuds died. So I apologize for that. I'd like to thank the planning staff for putting that presentation together. I think it was a good synopsis of what a SODAR unit is. In line with the Met Tower, this is a method of data collection for us and uses sound essentially thrown up into the sky to collect more wind resource information where it is placed. This structure is rolled onto property with a trailer. There is no foundation or any type of steel piling associated with it. I don't have much to add. To speak specifically to the sound aspect of this, we cite these very carefully, understanding that there's intermittent chirping associated with the SODAR units, as that's their core functionality is emitting that sound. In the four permits that we've applied for, there is a minimum setback of 400 feet from any property line in 3 of them, and then the one additional at the Breedlove location is while closer to property lines, it's not nearer than 1,200 feet from any structure, and that particular structure I don't believe is a residence. And then additionally, it's 1,250 feet approximately from any roads. So as far as the sound emitted, we do like to cite these carefully. As the staff report stated, at 300 feet, it is not very audible, and then it drops off even further from that distance.
I would like to point out one correction to what the applicant just said. Based on their site plan, we do have at least one where it's about 122 feet from a property line. Just looking at this again, there's another. It appears the closest is 122 feet, but there aren't any houses anywhere nearby on that side.
And
Just
that
wanted to point that out.
That would be the Breedlove property, correct?
Yes.
Any questions for John or Carl? No? Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. Get my sheets right here. Okay. What we're going to do is we're just going to open this up for public comment, I think. I don't think we have that sign-in sheet. If you provided public comment earlier and you'd like to provide public comment again, you're certainly welcome to. Please remember our 3-minute limit.
And then after you complete your public comment, if you could sign the sheet again, I'd
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just have 2 questions. Well, first of all, is it anyone's knowledge what the landowners are being paid for this and whether they're all being paid the same amount? And I think that's of interest. And also, I know that whether that's the amounts are paid each year. I'm confused about the company's requested a 5-year permit, but you're recommending a 1-year approval. So how does that? Do they have to come back every year for renewal, even though it seems like it was a 5-year contract with the possibility of renewals of the 5-year contract?
So Mr. Kaufman, we might ask some of those questions of staff.
Thank you.
after public comment.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, come on up.
Hi, my name is Mike Forth. I live within a half a mile of the Wayne Hopkins site. And I have concern about these SODAR equipment are noise emitters. He couldn't hear it at 300 feet, but the wildlife will. And we have a wildlife corridor that runs along that creek down on the north side of his property. And that runs across my property where I have a grove of walnut trees. My niece and nephew and their children harvest sap in that grove to make sugar out of. And I don't know if they're going to have to wear hearing protection or not, depending on how close this thing's going to be. Because I certainly don't want young children's hearing affected. But I'm concerned about the wildlife corridor through there. We have owls, we have hawks, we have harriers that all nest within that wooded area. That's our rodent control out there. We also have coyotes and foxes and bobcats, wild turkeys, quail, and deer. And if they all get chased away, then there's going to be no reason to have an environmental impact study on wildlife. And we all know wild animals' hearing is more acute than a human's hearing is. So that's what concerns me about this. I'm not uncomfortable with having SODAR units out there, but I am uncomfortable with where they're located. We need to take wildlife and wildlife corridors into effect and how that's going to affect them. That's all I have to say, and thank you.
Thank you. Sir, can you sign in? Thank you.
Thank you for hearing this. My name is Laurel Nice. I've been a resident of Douglas County since 1978 and lived on a half section of Century Farm for 37 years. I grew up in Dickinson County where they tried to pass this. And there I also was blessed to grow up on a farm where my great grandfather came from Scotland and started it in 1880. So I know the value and the heritage behind a farm and what many people here are dealing with. They've dealt with the intricacies of the technology and the thought of putting up these enormous monstrosities. And yet I want to approach a different avenue. The fact that you're not looking at the individual lives that are going to be affected by these. People here have worked for generations through the Dust Bowl, through the Depression, to keep this land. They paid their taxes. They're not just paying rent, they own this land. And for you, I compare it to when I was a child, the only Sunday that my dad would stay home from church was on the opening of hunting season, because people from Johnson County would migrate to Dickinson County, where they acted as if that was their property. And we had cattle run through fences. Our dog was shot. If we didn't go to the door and say, you can't hunt, we had 2 different times where they walked into our home and cussed my father out. And the ultimate situation was where he actually went down and told people, you can't hunt here. Our house is right there. Would you want me hunting this close to your home? And the man actually put a gun to my dad's head. Being a farmer, he went back, got his notebook out, shaking as I am now, wrote down the tag number, came in the house and called Dutch Anderson, the sheriff. They found out this man was a security guard at Shawnee Mission Medical Center. People take on a different persona when they're not dealing with their own land, and that's what's happening here. We're dealing with years of people working hard, whether outside the farm or farming, to keep this. And then without thought to that, because we're down at the bottom part of the county, I feel like we're disregarded. And people who don't own this property are deciding what to do with it. You wouldn't be looking at putting up the sonar and the wind instruments if you weren't thinking about going further. I talked to your attorney on Monday. He said, well, he has 80 acres in Topeka. He wouldn't mind putting it there. I wonder if he values the heritage. Or did you just inherit that land? Or did you watch your family work and save and scrimp to keep that land? You don't live on it and you don't have a vested interest in it. And that's the
Laurel.
difference. And that's why some of you can be so shallow with how you vote. So I hope you remember that's their
Laurel.
lives. That's our lives that you're affecting.
Thank you. Your time's up. No, Laurel. Can you sign in, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Shuck. I live
Lori,
on
get close to that microphone. Don't forget.
Sorry.
Thanks.
I live on 466 North 100 Road, right next door to Mr. Forth. We're family. There's 3 siblings on this property that's been in our family for generations. And we're all for one and one for all, which our lawyer thought was a really unusual situation. But we share and share alike. We share our properties, we share the responsibilities, we share the profits at the end of the year, the whole 9 yards. We believe in diversity. So we have livestock that we raise, pastures that we lease out, and we have walnut syrup we make along with some other products that we sell there from the farm. I know it's a little thing, but this was $3,000 last year. That made a dent in our property taxes. The sonar at Wayne Hopkins Farm will be 684 feet from the grove we work. That's over 100 years old. We're down there every other day for several hours. We have children 2 years old and 7 years old with us, my grandkids. I'm not good with just, I couldn't hear it, or I asked Carl about this earlier at a meeting on Monday. And when you live there, you really want statistics. I want to hear what the decimal reading is on this thing. If it's going to be that close to us, I won't want those. You try to put hearing protection on a 2-year-old, it doesn't work. There, like I said, Google Earth, we're right there. Right here's this. Move it a little further away from us and I'll probably sit down and shut up. It can be moved on that property quite a bit. And if the owner likes it, move it closer to his house. But he's gone a lot of the year anyway. Also, I feel like we're letting them put their foot in the door here. They keep saying there's no permit pending yet, but I keep thinking, why would they invest that much money in equipment if they didn't feel they were coming? I also don't want statistics from NextEra. I want it from an outside source. I don't believe those. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you letting us talk. Bye.
Lori, did you sign in? Yes. Okay, thanks.
I apologize. I realized I talked at the wrong time about the wrong thing. Now back to on the SODAR, that's going to be the one at N1 in E150 Road.
Can you remind me of your name?
Stephanie Knauber. I'm so
Thank you,
sorry.
Stephanie. I appreciate it.
I seen the picture. Now is it going to be up on the hills? What I want to know, because I want to know how the chirping and the sonar is going to impact the livestock. I did not get a good enough answer for that. Because my husband's got hearing problems, and when you played that, it about sent him into orbit. And like I said, we're right there on that corner. Our property starts there. And I'm against it. I do kind of agree. Maybe if it was on farther, like up the hill or something where it wasn't as close to the property, maybe, but, like I said, basically, I think where he's kind of wanting to put it is in some place where it's not going to get the full impact of what they're looking for to begin with. I think it needs to be, like I said, like she said, up, it needs to be farther away from where we're at to where it's almost in the middle of the property, where it's not really going to affect a whole. I mean, yes, it's going to affect us, but not as much. But like I said, I'm more concerned about, what it's going to do for my livestock, how it's going to affect their mating, their, aborting babies, things like that, because that's our livelihood. And again, as well, like I said, my husband with his hearing issues and stuff. So that's our biggest issue, because we absolutely don't, we just don't want that thing there, at least not as close to that anyway. So.
Again, Carrie Barth, 135 East 1300 Road. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Actually, I do want an answer. I have this invitation not only from Coffee County for you to go have the steak dinner. I want to also get a response on speaking with Reno County and Osage County and Wabansie County and Franklin County and any other county too that has been through this or recently been through this. I'm going to offer you something. Can I hand something over to them as well? Okay, I'll hand it to you then after I talk. So I don't know if everybody's been paying attention to the news, but these SODAR units and what they're doing offshore on the East Coast. I think I just read on just yesterday, the 31st USA Today, there's a new article. There's like a 6 humpback whale that's washed up. They have had them emergency stop the SODAR or whatever is going on with the testing and everything like that. What people are bringing up as concerns are legit. And they're asking for a massive study to be done because it's a huge concern. I don't know about you all, but that was the most annoying noise. If it's the Breedloves, I know I feel for them because I can't believe they signed up to make a couple $1,000s on having that unit on their property. That would be the most annoying thing. And the length of time is there. I can't believe that that would be something that somebody would submit themselves to. So those are the main things. I mean, I don't know how many times you're gonna make us come back here and talk, but I think the people have spoken. They don't want this. People are not against wind. They're not against solar for personal use and personal consumption. This is actually not going to benefit the state of Kansas at all. This is benefiting a massive industry, and the wind and energy is getting sent out of here. I sit on the local government committee. I have actually heard multiple lobbyists and associations come in that represent you all as well, by the way. And this is not something that's really going to help our community. And you keep voting yes. And so I don't know what it's going to take for you to vote no. So this is the Zimmerman versus Wabunsee County commissioners, the law sides on your side to say no. The amount of reasons you've been given to say no are off the charts, more than enough to say no and to beat these wind turbine companies from ruining our county. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Charles J. Lane, I live down there at 352, basically just will say I live at Warden. I wasn't going to talk tonight. I really wasn't. I thought there was too many other good comments made tonight from people that really are sitting by these things. I had a farm that was about 150 feet from the one that was put up in 2018. That was a Met tower. Never heard much out of it, I have to admit. But as I sit here and listen to everything that's said tonight here, I almost feel like we're like a football stadium or an auditorium. We're getting sold out for the licensing rights of the Southern Douglas County. I mean, think about what's going on here. We're just basically getting sold out here. It's fine for the 40-some people here this is going to affect. And they can play this cat and mouse game that we're not going to get an application. It's coming. The only question is when. But like I said, I just feel like we're getting sold out. We're selling the rights to the name of Southern Douglas County for wind industry. I'm not going to debate whether we need alternate energy. I think it's great. I'm thinking about solar panels, my personal self. Whether I do it or not, I don't know. It's a lot of money. I think the power companies want to get out of the generation business. I really do. They'd rather just sell it. But anyway, give it some thought. That's all I'm going to say. Everybody wants to go home, I know.
More public comment? Just a reminder, if we have anybody else, you can give your public comment and then sign in, so.
Okay, I'm gonna start off, first thing off, I don't have a dog in this immediate fight for the solar, I guess, detection system. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stand with my fellow Douglas County residents on what they believe in, what they stand for, because they're making a lot of sense. To me, part of this problem, I think, is the credibility of the company that we're dealing with, is Nextera and their representatives. They're not being very truthful or half truths to a lot of things they're saying. I think they're vague when they don't want to answer something. They kind of dance around the bush. But for an example, which I'm going to have to go back to my earlier talk, is that the structure on the measurements that they're talking about from being so far from somebody's property or gates, it's not truthful. In my case, they said the nearest structure was 3,000 feet. Okay. Is that the nearest structure? No, it's not. On the map, my house is 1,500 feet from where that tower is going in. Now, somebody's going to have to tell me why they're saying it's 3,000 feet. I think the reason why is because it looks better. Oh, it's 3,000 feet away. Well, no, it's not. It's 1,500 feet. So, you know, if you're not being truthful, you've lost your credibility with me. You know, I mean, if you're lying to me, then tell me, hey, I'm telling you a lie. But don't sit there and spewed out a bunch of stuff that you're telling truths and you're not. And it's true what this lady said earlier about the sound of these things. I was in the US Navy, and the sonar stuff, it's detrimental to the ocean wildlife. So don't tell me that's a half truth, because I've been there. And I got 1 minute left. I say, maybe change that to 2, okay? You know, anyway, I guess it's just upsetting to me that sometimes I feel like when we're dealing with big companies and slick talkers and lawyers and hedge funds and companies that want to make money and landowners that want to make money, it don't matter what the hell you say. You can come up here and lie your teeth through. And that's part of the problem we're having with our society right now. Got a bunch of damn liars. Got 30 seconds left. Okay, put 15 seconds up there. I don't give a shit. So these are my feelings. I'm passionate about them. And I'll anything I say here tonight, I'll stand behind it. So call me out if I've told one half truth or a lie to any of this stuff. That's all I got to say.
My name is Martha Kaufman, and I'm a half a mile from the Hopkins site, and I didn't get any notice. And I don't know, I think one of the staff members said something about notice went out within a half, if it's anybody within a half a mile. And my farm is exactly a half a mile. So I will just say that if I didn't need to get notice of this proceeding, Okay, that's not enough if you live out in the country. If a half a mile means within a half a mile, and I'm just on for like to the middle of the road and I'm on the other side of the road, I think that that regulation or rule should be changed, because in the country, a half a mile is like your next door neighbor.
Any more public comment? Sarah, anyone online?
Yes, Commissioner. Got a few folks online. Catherine Morgan, you're being moved into the panel. You can unmute yourself and provide your public comment. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm sorry. Who is on deck?
Catherine, you
Oh,
are. You're ready.
sorry, I couldn't hear you. I was connecting. Again, this is Catherine Morgan. I'm at 68 East 150th Road. I'm 1/2 mile north of the Sodar unit that's proposed on the Ray, the Ray property. And I concur with Mrs. Kaufman's comment. You know, out in the country, a half a mile seems like it's a long distance, maybe for those folks who don't live in the country, but a half a mile sound carries very far out in the country. You can hear, you know, animals, you can hear folks hunting, you know, that are miles away. And, you know, my father lives on the property that's directly a half mile north of this proposed unit. And I can only imagine the chirping sound that's constantly in the background, you know, 24/7, is not going to be appropriate for the health and wellness of anyone living close to that unit, in addition to the wildlife there. I also have significant concerns that the proposal that's been reviewed and displayed here does not address exactly, you know, what type of meteorological data they are trying to obtain with these units. As I said in my previous comments, all weather data is available through national government agencies. I can't imagine that a piece of equipment this size is needed to obtain so much significant data that NOAA doesn't already know about it. So again, I go back to my previous point of why are the towers and these SODAR equipments even necessary? They have the data. This is the energy company's methodology to get their foot in the door to move forward with the turbines. We know that, and you know that. I also, again, just, share my concerns with my fellow neighbors about the impact to, their livelihood and livestock. And again, to my previous comment, I feel like it would be in the best interest of the commission to actively listen to what your community is telling you. Again, there has not been one positive comment for any of these proposals. And I also concur with the previous comment of, I'm not sure what else it takes for this commission to hear what your community is telling you, that we do not want any of these types of structures at all within our community. Thank you.
Okay. We're moving Michael Hart into the panel. Michael, you have 3 minutes. And you need to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Michael, you're still muted. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear. So I guess what I wanted to address was earlier when the guy was talking about using his cell phone to record the SODAR noises. That's not really scientific. I have a noise report for SODAR and meteorological testing facilities. It's from May 29th of 2018. I'd be happy to forward to the committee. So according to the manufacturers, these SODAR units are going to send a sound burst about every 2 to 2.5 seconds at a maximum level of 81 decibels. The average over an hour is about 78 decibels. Again, according to the manufacturer, the atmospheric absorption is approximately 5 decibels at about 800 feet. My house is situated down from on the Ray site. The utility building that was in that picture, just beyond that is my house, about 1,300 feet away. So the sound that I'm going to be encountering is going to be about 70 decibels, which is about the sound of a vacuum cleaner going constantly every 2.5 seconds. This is also going to be within 500 feet of my pond, which is a stopping point for migrating ducks and blue herons. The sound's going to affect, not only migrating birds, but also bats and other wildlife. This is really practically in my front yard. And it directly conflicts with my use of my property. In the report, it was saying that there were no conflicts with the use of property, but there are. It conflicts with my ability to go outside and enjoy my property, at a moderate level. So I'm specifically asking the committee to reject the application for permit 2023-004 at the Ray site, just because it is so close to my house and it's going to affect my family, who are all autistic, and autistic people tend to have be very sensitive to sound. And this is just going to be sound bombardment for all of us and our farm animals. So again, I just ask that you please vote no, at least for this application, because it is going to affect my family very detrimentally. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving Don Huddleston into the panel. Don, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Dawn Huddleston. I live at 504 North 100 Road. I am less than 1,500 feet away from the Hopkins site, probably closer to 1,200 square feet or 1,200 feet away. I actually am part of the family that Lori and Michael Forth spoke about. I've lived here all my life, and I also live with my 13-year-old son who's autistic and is going to be less than 1,500 feet from that tower and whatever noises it's making. I've spent the last 13 years doing everything I can to support him and help him, including moving back home so that I could provide him with a safe environment that was free of distraction and things that would harm him or his mental stability. And I guess it's going to move in across the road if something's not done. I actually came into this with a little more trust in my county government until I started seeing some of these pictures that was presented, and I'm actually horrified because that was some creative photography. Mr. Hopkins' property was pictured at an angle to, I think, purposely leave out the houses that would have been in the background, because I can see Mr. Hopkins' property from my front porch. I can see the back of his house. I rode the bus with his daughter. We were that close. I used to ride my bike to his house. I also am pretty overwhelmed that we're listening so much to expert opinion from a gentleman that is sitting in Florida right now talking about our local community like he knows it so well and how we'll be affected, when I see on LinkedIn that he graduated high school 5 years ago and has never been to Kansas. I really don't have anything more to say than I really hope that my county that I've loved for so long will help protect my son and me from anything that's harmful in our own home. Thank you.
Tracy Newell, you're being moved into the panel. Tracy, you can unmute yourself and you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me now, Sarah?
Yep.
Okay. So my name is Tracy Newell, and I am the daughter of the Gunthers that are adjacent to the Breedlove property. And from the map and what you described is that it was 123 feet from the property line. And I have concerns with that. Yeah, you have to notify everybody from a half a mile away, but when it's only 123 feet, I think that they probably did that to stay away from buildings that are on the other property. But I do ask that if they're not going to get the consent, or the application is not going to go through the consent of the neighboring property owners that have been there and farmed that community, and then the effects that could have on livestock and people's hearing, that they do consider a barrier or a land diameter away from other people's property. And I think that this needs to be included a little bit of a greater than 300 feet due to the fact that we're dealing with sound waves and decibels, and people live out in the country to inquire the natural sound of wildlife and the peace and quiet, and to have something that's that close to your property, if we want to gather information, and then let's move it closer to town. Everything was posted on the Lawrence City website on the wind energy, but nothing was posted or sent out to the county. And when you only give somebody less than a month notice about this going in, that limits their research. If this company was legit and really believed in what their product was doing, they would have gone to all the area property owners and explained what they were doing and gave out packets and property before they even applied for the application. But instead we did a backwards way. And I will ask one more thing. We've heard several members of our county. We've heard long-term families that have been in this for generations and generations, that have been established. They believe in Douglas County. They love where they're at in Douglas County. They vote in Douglas County. And I ask you, commissioners, that we vote upon, to please listen to the people that vote for you. Listen to their voices. This is their lives that you're voting on, not just your opinion. Listen to what they have to say and what they are doing. That's all I ask. I also ask that you vote no on all 5 properties of this. I think it's ridiculous if it emits sound and can harm the environment. It's not gathering that much information to outweigh the harm it could do with the decibels and the hearing. Thank you for your time.
Commissioners, we have no other hands raised online.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back up to the commission for questions or discussion. Carl, can you remind me how loud is that chirp set at?
I don't, excuse me. I don't have specific decibels as to how loud it is. The applicant may be able to speak more to exactly how many decibels it is. Based on my personal observation of the one in Cuba, Kansas, up close to it, I'd say it's about like a conversation that we would have standing 5 feet apart. Again, 300 feet away, I could barely hear it. It was like a whisper. And then 700 feet away, I couldn't hear it at all.
Check with that applicant. John, do you have a decibel level on that?
Yes, I do. So based on the information provided to us by the SODAR vendor, through the study they performed, if you're standing right next to the SODAR unit, it's 87 decibels, which on their chart of sound comparison is the equivalent of a truck driving by at 40 miles an hour if you were standing 50 feet away. That drops off with distance, obviously, and is subject to, environmental conditions and wind and things. There's obviously variation here, but when you get to a distance of 50 meters, which is approximately 160 feet or so, that decibel level drops to 63 dBA, which is the equivalent of a conversation standing, similar to what Carl was saying. According to the vendor, the distance at which the chirps are no longer audible at all is between 250 and 350 meters, which is approximately 800 to 11 or 1,200 feet. And additionally, one point to add regarding livestock, we often equip these SONAR units with cattle guards as well. So
John,
there is an
John,
understanding and
John, I didn't
Yeah.
ask that question.
okay, I apologize.
Thank you. My question is for Carl. Carl, did you find in any of your research, I did some of my own research on how it affects animals. I was looking for SODAR, not sonar. And did you find in any of your research impacts to animals or wildlife from this?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay,
I am aware that they're typically placed in areas where there is grazing occurring though.
okay, thank you.
I don't know who would like to take this question, but someone needs to address the difference between SODAR and sonar. Who would like to take that? That'd be, I don't know if Carl, you want to take that or if I should pitch that to the applicant for the moment. Okay, John, it's you.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to the specific differences between sonar and SODAR. I just know that SODAR stands for sonic detection and ranging system, and that is the type of technology that we're using for these devices.
Alan, would you care to take it?
Mhm, mhm.
I know we're not supposed to speak out of turn, but I just looked here online, I found a site where it says right here that.
Ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Question that came up earlier from Mr. Kaufman about, how much folks are paid. I mean, I know from working on the planning commission, that's not something that we're purview to at all, what the financial agreements are from any, and in fact, Mr. Kaufman, we can't ask that. It would actually get us into trouble. So that's something between the property owner and the applicant in this case. So I appreciate the question, but hey, we don't, so just folks, I appreciate the conversation here, but we don't do that. We have public comment, and then the commission then can either ask comments or make statements, but we don't get into a back and forth with the public. So, but to your question, which I was getting to, what was the difference between, Carl, if you could talk about why it's 1 year versus a 5-year application and what that means?
Of course, this is a relatively new land use in Douglas County. We don't know a whole lot about it. This 1-year period will allow us to better understand how this does affect neighbors. So when this comes back in a year, if it comes back in a year, we can address those concerns and potentially add or take away any conditions that we need to. The previous SODAR application that was approved in 2018 was approved for 1 year with a 6-month extension. It appears based on aerial imagery that that's about as long as they kept it in place. I wasn't able to find any renewal for that.
Is it fair to ask what the location of that was and how far it was from houses and so on?
I could pull that up for you if you give me a minute.
I'd be curious to know if the zoning and codes office got any comments back from the public during that time that it was operating.
Was looking through that application, I wasn't able to find any written comment, and when I looked at the minutes, it didn't look like there was any public comment during that meeting. I can double check that though.
So no public comment during the meeting for the SODAR unit at that time. Were there any complaints is what I was curious about.
I'm not aware of any, and I see Tanya shaking her head too.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I saw Tanya shaking her head no, but it doesn't seem that we have any sort of complaints or concerns during the use of that SODAR unit on file, but I do appreciate the question, and that was kind of a big curiosity for me is what do we know from that one that was approved in 2018 and whether or not there was public feedback or concerns. Also, I wonder if it's possible on the spot, Carl, to answer Commissioner Woolley's question about how it compares in terms of distance, the distance from other property lines and specifically residences and buildings.
I'm gonna pull that up right now.
Thank you.
While he's answering that question, John, you mentioned that you work very hard to cite these so that they are appropriate distance away from neighboring property owners or even, in fact, the property owner's house. How, if we get reports, like let's say we come to a 1-year renewal, that's what the request is for, and we do get feedback, how dramatic is it moving at 50 feet, 100 feet? I mean, does it throw off all your data? You're just going to pull it then? You know, if we place it somewhere and someone says, I can really hear that, and then and staff goes out there and says, yeah, I can still hear that. How big of a deal is it moving it? It seems like since it's on wheels and, you know, you could move that distance fairly easily.
We likely would be able to, in that event, I would certainly ask the county or county staff to provide me with notice as soon as possible, because that would again trigger a consult with the landowner to determine if they're comfortable with the new location. It likely wouldn't be a problem on our end as far as the data collection goes, but that would subject us to discuss that with the host property.
Thank you.
Oh, calm down.
I have a question for John, and this has been raised a couple of times. Why is this data different from what is publicly available?
Sure, absolutely. We did provide a fact sheet in our initial application here, and the difference with SODAR units is that they're capturing wind resource data at different heights. For what reason, I'm not sure in particular. It might have to do with differing turbine heights or resource at different levels, but to my knowledge, the publicly available info doesn't have to do with wind speed at varying levels. I'll try to pull up what those heights are. It is in the staff report, I believe, but that's the key difference between what the SODAR is collecting and what would generally be publicly available data.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, John, birds and bats, what impacts does it have on those?
There are no known impacts on our end from birds and bats that would be flying overhead from the SODAR unit. With regard to other animals as well, I would like to state that we typically equip these with cattle guards, and they're typically on properties that do have livestock that's grazing. So if a cow was to be standing, you know, directly adjacent to the SODAR unit, it would be loud or slightly uncomfortable, but nothing that would approach dangerous levels. As far as birds and bats, we haven't had any known instances of kills or falls near the SODAR units. So that's all I could add there.
Map pulled up showing the location of that SODAR unit, so I'll share my screen here. So there you can see an aerial image with the placement of that SODAR unit. And I can zoom out here. That orange line you see here, that's a property line. So if I measure that. Almost 650 feet.
And do you have a location or distance to the nearest house?
So about 950 feet to the nearest house.
Is that East 1100 Road?
Yes.
Probably between North 200 and North 300 from the looks of it. Yeah. So there are a fair number of homes on the west side of that road within that block. I guess that's still a pretty good distance from the home that you just mapped to. And so the homeowner that's there is not the same as the property owner. Is that correct? Okay.
Any further questions, commissioners?
Commissioner Reed, I just want to, and I'm sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself, Carl, so might have been writing while you said something. Commissioner Willie just asked about birds and bats, which is a particular concern that we heard about with relation to the guy wires on the Met Tower. And this is a much different footprint and has our, different concern from my perspective. I'm curious if you've done any, as part of this application process, research or study about whether or not there's any known impacts or information about the impact on wildlife, the sound impact. Not, we've heard from the applicant about cattle guards, and that's not the concern that we've heard. I don't think it's about the sounds impact on both livestock and wildlife. In reading these before tonight's meeting, that is a concern that came front of mind for me, and that really makes the SODAR units stand apart from the Met. So I just want to understand if you gathered any information about that or have anything to share.
I haven't gathered any information about wildlife, and I'm not aware of any specific impacts.
I pitched that also to the applicant. I assume there are quite a few of these out around the state of Kansas. Have we heard anything from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks weighing in on these? Or the Nature Conservancy or some other group that has an eye on impacts of renewable energy free projects like this?
Correct. We do have a number of these units deployed across the state of Kansas. The one that Carl was able to visit was one in a project that we have under development at this time. We haven't received any comment from any state level agencies or federal level agencies about concerns with impacts to wildlife for these units. And typically in most counties, because of their smaller size and structure, we don't typically permit for these because of the different nature versus the Met Tower. But regardless of that, we deploy them in many counties and have had them in many counties and have not received any particular complaints or concerns about environmental impacts or impacts to animals.
Commissioner Willie, if I may just piggyback off that a bit. To be clear, have in any of those counties where those permits were approved and the usage has been ongoing, have you notified any state agencies? Is that, we heard earlier a little bit about how the crop dusters and the association on a state level that supports crop dusters, as long as they know about it, they haven't had any problems with it. And so it seems like that's a notification that is maybe par for the course for you. What about with SODAR units and agencies that might have an interest in knowing about it and then being able to pay attention to whether or not there's impacts?
Absolutely. To my knowledge, we do not report the placement of SODAR units specifically to state or federal level agencies.
Would you be opposed to making those locations known to the Kansas Biological Survey for follow-up information that they might gather from them?
Not at all. We would certainly be willing to provide them with the locations.
How would that work in terms of landowner access?
If any agency that has an interest in this and that we reported to would like to visit the site and examine it, similarly to how we granted county staff access to the one that he visited, we would coordinate with the landowner about a day before or multiple days before and give notice and enable those agencies to access the property.
Make kind of a general comment here. So as I mentioned, I live in this neighborhood and our family farm was approached about hosting a SODAR unit, which we spent a lot of time asking questions and looking into it as best we could. It would have been next to our pond around our cattle. Did not really find any significant concerns at that time when we were doing that work and asking questions about hosting that on my land around my livestock. The reason that we turned it down was just for the purpose of being able to weigh in on potential wind regulations that I felt like I couldn't weigh in on that time. I wasn't on the county commission and I wasn't on the planning commission. It was just a question of if I wanted to have my voice heard in that process, that I didn't want to have also taken any money from a company that had an interest in that. So that was my only reason for turning it down, recognizing that it was just as likely to be closer to my house than the original location if it went onto a neighbor's property, though I don't see any very nearby that are in this application. The nearest one is probably a mile or 2 miles.
So just a couple of comments. First of all, one comment was made that Mr. Anderson is our attorney, and I want to clarify he is NextEra's attorney. He's not our attorney. So let me first say that. Second, I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about a lot here is people's ability to do what they desire to do with their land. And I think when we hear public comment about wanting to restrict what someone else is doing with their land, one of the things we really have to consider is how they're using their land impacting your land. And I understand, and I truly get if somebody's putting a Met tower on their land, that you can see it from yours and there's an impact there. And what we try to do, I think, whether it's the planning commission or the county commission, is try to mitigate that impact or try to come up with what we would call conditions to lower that impact. When one of the things in this application that is doing to mitigate the impact is to put that SODAR unit far enough away from residences that they won't hear that sound or that it is very minimal. There's some calculators online that you can use to sort of take a decibel level, set a distance from that decibel level and see what the level will be. There's a whole formula. I can't do it. I can't figure it out. So I was really pleased that there was something online that allowed me to calculate that. And when I use that 87 decibel level and I go 300 feet away, the volume is equal to a quiet library. So I think that's something that, you know, when I think about what the impacts are to a neighbor, and certainly it's scary to think that somebody is using their property in a way that's going to impact me on my property. And what you're asking us to do is take steps to mitigate that, because I think there is the right of that property owner to say, I'd like to do this on my property. And I don't think my neighbor who doesn't own my property can tell me what I can and cannot do. I think that's the role that government plays, of bringing two neighbors together and say, how can you do what you do, But let's take steps to make sure we mitigate that enough so that it isn't a burden on your neighbor. In some ways that's not possible. And this is really every planning item that we have. Every time we do this, it's a neighbor who's saying how you're using your property is infringing on my rights. So for example, if we're looking at the use of an event center, well, you may have a lot of traffic to that event center that's infringing on my property because I don't want to see cars driving up and down my road. And so we'll limit the hours that that facility can be used to try to mitigate that impact, but also give the landowner some ability to have some control of their land and do what they'd like to do on their land. I say that because I really appreciate what Carl has done to sort of look at how can we mitigate the impacts. And while they're never going to go fully away, I also want to honor that that landowner wants to do this on their land. They want to have the ability to do this. That's why they agreed to it. That's why they put the contract in. That's why the application is here. And really what our job, I believe, is to understand what those impacts are and determine whether that's enough to the neighbors. You all might not agree, and I appreciate your feedback and understanding that, but I want to give you just sort of a little bit of what goes on in my head when I think of every planning item that comes before us is how do we lower that impact, but also honor the property owner's desire as well.
I am still having more questions though about the sound and especially about what we've heard from some families with particular sound sensitivity. And I don't really know how to address those other than we've got distances. I'd like to go through each map and look at distances to houses again on the screen when we get to that point. And also to understand like what is the complaint process and how fast can that be mitigated if there is a problem that is not workable for a neighbor, for a family. I have another question that I'll get to, but the other commissioners are thinking about that also.
I think it's a good idea to go ahead. I mean, especially since there are multiple applications and we heard some, well, Carl, you corrected something that the applicant said about the minimum distance from property lines. So if we could just quickly assess how each of the applications differ in terms of distance from, in my opinion, not necessarily a property line, but to a residence.
This application located on the Breedlove property is the closest one to any residence. They have it as about 900 feet from that property line. It's about 1,000 feet from the house, that house on the neighboring property.
Can you say those again? I'll write them down so I don't have to ask you again.
With the Breedlove property, the closest house to the proposed Sodar unit is about 1,000 feet away.
And the property line was fairly close.
About 900 feet from the proposed Sodar unit to the property line by that house. So I can zoom in here. The house is right about here. You see 916 feet from the Sodar unit to this property line, and then it's about 1,000 feet to the house.
Nearest property line there is the 122 feet to the Roger Johnson's property.
Did you want to go through? Commissioner Willie, did you want to go through each one and do that?
Yes. We've had questions on at least 2 of the 4 of them, and I want to make sure that we go through all of them.
This is the fall property. There aren't any houses within 1,000 feet of this one. It's 408 feet from the road. There don't appear to be any houses on this property. So I don't anticipate this one being audible to any nearby houses.
Next one.
This is the Hopkins property, the property that has the house built on it. And the applicant measured out 1,886 feet from the property owner's house.
And this is one where we heard from other people who lived nearby the Hopkins property. Can we locate any of those homes?
Give me just a second. I'll get that property pulled up here. So the Sodar unit was right about here. So to this house, 2,500 feet or so. To this house, 2,800 feet. And to this house, about 2,500 feet. And then the Ray property. 408 feet from the road. And I'll pull that property up here quick. Sodar unit will be located right about here. So to this nearest house, about 1,800 feet. Then the other one just north of it. About 1,600 feet.
Ma'am, we asked the questions, sorry. I understand, but that's not the way we do this.
Mind pulling the map up again?
That property line about 580 feet.
Any more questions, commissioners? Comments? Motions?
I'll have a question for Carl. What is the complaint process? And then another question is, are these units something that can be turned off when times are still? Are they only measuring during when there are higher wind speeds to be measured, or are they always on?
That is a question I asked of the applicant, if the units can be turned off. They said they can turn them off remotely, but they prefer not to do that because they like to have continuous data. The applicant could speak to that a little further. And as far as the complaint process goes, again, they can send an email to zoning@douglascountyks.org, or they're welcome to give us a call.
And within what we have written so far, what can we do about that if we have a complaint? And I'm thinking specifically about noise. I think that's probably the only issue that would come up with these.
Again, because of the distance from the nearest houses, I don't anticipate them being audible from any of those houses. We don't have any noise conditions that I have listed in the staff report. But that's something the commission may choose to add if they see fit.
So Commissioner Willie, is there a condition you'd like to put on there? Like if someone can hear it from their property at a certain decibel level, that we would need to move it?
Well, I'm struggling to see how exactly that would be written, that would be both practical and actionable.
Mhm.
And I'm open to other thoughts of other commissioners. And I'm thinking really most specifically about, people with sound sensitivity that may experience that in a way that others don't.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel like there's a need to put that, especially because we'll be back at this it has to be renewed within a year. And so I'm not saying, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that someone should have to put up with it for a year. I think if they're feeling like there's some issue, they can certainly contact Douglas County Codes. And we can try to investigate and try to come to some understanding, but I worry about writing a condition that we can't enforce is what I'm concerned about. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve a temporary business use permit request of NextEra Energy and Tower Associates to allow the sonic detection and ranging system to be located on the property generally described as being on the north side of North 200 Road between East 900 and East 1000 Road.
I'm going off one of the facts that we did not hear from either of the two closest neighbors or any of the three closest neighbors to that particular property with concerns. I think I can second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to keep going and make a motion to approve a temporary business use permit. Whoops, yes.
Clarity on whether or not you want to accept the conditions in the staff report on that.
Yeah. So
It'd be nice to have that in the motion.
So I will back up. Well, yeah, we haven't made, we already had a motion and an approval.
Well, I think you can clarify your motion that on that particular one, it included the conditions in the staff report. And then that you might
Okay.
want to re-vote on it.
Okay,
Yeah, just to be certain.
yep. Okay, I'm gonna take that motion and amend it to include the conditions listed in the staff report. I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
All right, moving on to 3.4, a motion to approve a temporary business use permit from John Felicio Ball of NextEra Energy Inc. For Tower Associates and LLC to allow for the sonic detection and ranging system to be located on a property generally described as being southwest of the intersection of North 600 Road and East 450 Road with the conditions included in the staff report.
Second.
Second, any further discussion?
This one had no houses close by, one of the few.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 3.5, I make a motion to issue a temporary business permit request from John Felicio of NextEra Energy for Tower Associates LLC to allow a sonic detection and ranging system to be located on property generally described as being on the west side of East 550 Road between North 100 Road and North 1 Road with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm going to hold on this one. I will be opposed.
Thank you. And finally, item 3.6, motion to approve a temporary business use permit from John Felicio, and I'm hoping I'm getting your name right, John. Sorry if I'm not. Of NextEra Energy Inc. for Tower Associates LLC to allow a sonic detection and ranging system to be located on property generally described as being northeast of the intersection of North 1 Road and East 150 Road with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
2-1. With that, that ends our general business items. We'll move on to appointments. Thank you, Carl, for your work. Appreciate it. Do you need something else? Yes,
And 3.5.
and 3.5. Yes. Okay, we'll move on. Appointments. Commissioners, do we have any appointments?
Nope. Think we have, I don't know that I have sent you any this week, knock on wood, like.
Thank you, folks, for coming. You're welcome to stick around for appointments and miscellaneous if you like. Commissioner or administrator miscellaneous items. We usually start this with Sarah's memo.
Thank you, commissioners. My memo is in the packet. I want to point out that you have your week 3 legislative policy report from Little Government Relations. There's a number of things happening at the legislature, so you might want to take a look at that. In addition to some of our monthly reports, I want to remind commissioners that we have a 4 o'clock work session next Wednesday on open space. And we've got work sessions for the next several days or next several Wednesdays in a row. I have one other item I want to update commissioners on briefly that is not in my packet. And I wish.
Just give it a second.
Yeah, we just give it a second, Sarah. It's getting hard to hear you.
Austin was here.
Charlie, if you can go out so we can finish our meeting. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I wanted to give commissioners a brief update. I've had conversations this week and last week with representatives from Lawrence Douglas County Public Health and also Heartland Health Center about some of the questions that we asked the director of Douglas County Public Health about Title X services. Those conversations have been good and very helpful and thoughtful. We, in consultation with those two organizations, and I wanted to make sure that commissioners knew that we're still having those conversations. We plan to bring you back an update on those. In the meantime, we want to be very clear that we want to make sure that Title X services are continued in Douglas County in some form or fashion. So to that end, I just want to let commissioners know that there are conversations happening between public health and the health department and Heartland to just make sure that someone is applying for that grant. That grant application is due within the next 30 to 60 days, and it's quite extensive. So we are working to try to make sure that can happen and that we're still on track to making sure that those services are able to be provided here in Douglas County. My hope is I have some additional conversations scheduled in February, but my hope is perhaps by early March, late February, I could bring the commissioners a fuller update as to the status of that, potentially bring folks in from the health department and Heartland to have additional conversation about that. You should know that the Heartland board voted last night to consider apply for those grant funds to ensure that somehow they still come to Douglas County. So if you have questions, I'd be glad to have any follow up on that. And that's all I have, commissioners, tonight.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Sarah or miscellaneous items?
Nope.
I will say that we had the Workforce Investment Board meeting today. It was well attended. It was here at Beasley Tech. Got a nice update from Heartland Works Director Gina Kaufman on some of the great work that they're doing. So yeah, just leave it at that because it's late. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.